You're listening to Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie. I'm your host, Nate, and joining me is my co-host, Josh, but you might know him better from his work as the stunt haberdasher on Greatest Showman.
That's right. I was in charge of all the hats. They loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, I didn't think this, but I feel like a lot of people, like around the time like the Emmy and Oscar nom conversation was happening, a lot of people were calling it your consolation prize for not getting the prestige. But I feel like you really made it its own thing.
I tried, and I personally think that's why they won all the awards. But no one credits the haberdasher.
Yeah.
All right, you want to get into it?
Sure.
Let's go. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The infamous hero is now the man of the hour, Ernest P. Worrell. The best man in a position to use his amazing powers in a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way, Ernest has assumed the disguise of a simple school janitor with the aspiring goal of not being fired. Please, he's got nowhere to go. That's right. Welcome to The Importance of Being Earnest, where my co-host and I talk about Ernest's incredible legacy and how things might have been a little bit different if our hero Jim Varney hadn't returned to his home planet so soon.
Yep, you heard it right. This is the first season of Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie. We're going to watch all the Ernest movies, and at the end, we're going to try and pitch our perfect Ernest film. And are we halfway through, or are we more than halfway through? Where are we in the timeline?
I believe we are more than halfway through. This is the 6th entry in the Ernest film franchise, if you're not counting Dr. Otto von Gloombeam.
Yeah, okay, so we're in the home stretch, I think. I don't know, I don't follow sports.
We're real close to what they call, like a touchdown, if you want to use technical terms.
Mm-hmm. We're about to hit a hole-in-one straight to the touchdown zone, and we're going to go into sudden death overtime and have a hat trick.
Classic three-pointer.
Strike! Yeah, we watched Ernest Goes to School.
Yes, we did. And boy, howdy, was that a trip.
Yeah, this was a weird one, which, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, means it's really a weird one, because, this is weird relative to the movie where Ernest gets electro powers and foils a bank robbery being performed by his perfect doppelganger.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's pretty strange. What do you want to start? Start with rating it? Should I give a little summary? I, for some reason, have completely lost all memory of how this podcast is supposed to go.
Yes, welcome to our podcast, where every week our co-host Nate forgets about how the podcast works. I think we should do a summarization and then rate it. And, of course, as always, you're in charge of the summarization, which I am content to sit back, continue to make the hats for the next movie that I'm working on, shush shush, and eat some popcorn.
Oh, God. So, Ernest is a janitor working at a high school. It's the Chickasaw Falls High School, somewhere in some state in the United States. And I realize now that, I don't totally understand what happened in this movie. So, there's, some kind of budget czar who's making cuts on behalf of the school board, who wants to shut down this school and create kind of like a magnet high school for the whole district. And then for some reason, part of his plan to do that involves passing a new rule that says that everyone that works at the high school has to have a high school diploma. And he singles out Ernest specifically as a person who works there and doesn't have a high school diploma. I don't know if it's ever made clear why he hates Ernest so much or what he's going to get out of getting Ernest fired and how that's going to help him defund the school. But either way, Ernest has to go back to school to finish his senior year, I guess. Because he only really does it doesn't even seem like 1 year of school. It seems like he does a month of school. But he struggles because he refuses to study, mostly. He then teams up with the science teachers who create a machine to zap his brain to make him smarter, but only lasts for a little bit of time, so he has to keep getting zapped. Being smart makes him arrogant, And then he learns the machine breaks down, and his teen friends teach him to study, and he decides he doesn't need the machine. But he's in charge of the marching band, and the marching band's performance is important for some reason, and Ernest leads the marching band, but also at the same time, the budget guy bribes the football coach into throwing the football game, because if they lose the football championship, they'll be easier to defund. So then Ernest and the marching band and the science teachers drug the football team and replace the football team, and then they win the football game. And Ernest passes the big test and gets his high school diploma and gets to keep working at the high school. I guess that's his reward. That's the movie.
Yep. Also, the budget czar does some collusion and gets fired.
Yeah, it's exposed that he was trying to get the coach to throw the game, so they're both fired. But I don't think, the logical thing would be that Ernest replaces the football coach, but I don't think that actually happens at the end of the movie.
Nope. The end of the movie is he gets to keep his job, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, this movie is dense and frenetic and poorly structured, which makes it why I sounded like I had a head injury while I was trying to summarize it, because it was hard to keep straight what exactly happened and in what order and why.
Yeah, if I didn't watch this movie with you, it would sound like you're having a stroke right now, as it did with Ernest in this movie.
Oh god, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about in this movie. We were watching it, and you were every couple minutes, you would be like, oh no, I can't take notes fast enough.
Yeah, I have the most notes. This is going to be a treat for people who want a longer podcast, let me tell you. So, let's get into it with the rating. Do you want to start, or do you want me to go?
I'll start, I guess. This is not my least favorite Ernest movie I've watched so far. I still think... I don't know. I'm actually sort of torn. This might be... I might end up saying that this is equivalent to Rides Again. Because like I said, it's not very well structured. This is the loosest, sloppiest script and story structure any of these has ever had. I think one of the things that makes movies like Scared Stupid and Goes to Jail as enjoyable as they are, and as easy to digest as they are, despite how weird they are, is that they have pretty standard, well worn, efficient story structures. Ernest has a clear arc, and he has a thing that he wants, and the plot follows logically for as sort of cartoony as the movies are. This one doesn't really have that, and Rise Again has more of a coherent plot structure, which I think makes it maybe more watchable, but this has such a sort of bonkers energy as compared to the sort of more restrained and less likable Rides Again, that I think they ultimately end up kind of evening out and being sort of on the same level for me. Though I think that ultimately, the zaniness of this appeals to my specific taste more than Rides Again does, so it maybe ends up being slightly on top. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5. I think I stand by that. I think that's my rating for this.
Okay. All right. I mean, you definitely seem like you have some... it's not, a real concrete decision to do that. You're kind of low all over the place.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about this movie. I think it's there's stuff I like and there's stuff I don't like, and it's just it's really making me think about my philosophy of storytelling. This is a weird one for me to give a hard rating on. Where do you stand?
Well, see, I was in your shoes the other night as well after we watched this film. I, had this experience of this crazy, bonkers, formless film, and I enjoyed it in the moment, but walking away from it, separating it from the viewing and seeing it as a whole, I had an epiphany. So before I get to that epiphany, I'm going to give you my final rating, which is a 2. 2 out of 5, a 4 out of 10. I think this movie is really over the top bonkers and kind of haphazardly written. It does too much, but also seemingly ends up shapeless. And in the moment, the sheer craziness can be like laughable in like just the absurdity of it. But at the end of it, it's just directionless, unfocused mess. Now, here's my epiphany. As a clear Ernest scholar, as my compatriot is as well, we have watched another film that's on the similar page in a movie where Ernest saves Christmas.
Okay.
Now imagine a world, if you will, where Ernest goes to jail and Ernest Scared Stupid never happened. Imagine that the seemingly must have happened argument between John R. Cherry and Coke Sam's and Jim Varney happened sooner, where we got Ernest Goes to Camp, the movie that set up Ernest and his stories. Then we got Ernest Saves Christmas, and then we got Ernest Goes to School.
Okay.
Because the way this works is, in one direction, when Ernest Goes and Saves Christmas, directed by John R. Cherry, he takes a step back from the wackiness of Ernest. He makes Ernest the secondary character. Mm-hmm. There are wacky moments, but there's a formable plot, and Ernest is just in the background, the force of nature that is there. On the opposite side, we have Coke Sam's directing Ernest Goes to School. Ernest is at the forefront, and we see the world through Ernest's eyes, and everything is just straight up bonkers. And I propose to you, fellow Ernest scholar Nate, that these are two sides of a coin.
Okay.
That is Ernest.
All right, that's a very interesting thesis you've laid out. It does not really elucidate your opinion on the movie. Is it a good side of the coin or a bad side of the coin? How are you feeling about this side of the coin?
It's a bad coin to begin with.
Okay.
Because this is detracting from the Ernest as a whole. Because they're both getting the wrong message from the first Ernest film. Because the first Ernest film, Ernest Goes to Camp, is a complete arcing movie.
Okay, so both of them go too far in a direction, but just the opposite direction. So that's what you're saying.
Exactly. We have one that goes to the conservative right with Ernest Saving Christmas, and then we have one that goes all the way to the wacky left with Ernest Goes to School, where they're both completely directionless, but on the opposite sides of the spectrum.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I totally get where you're coming from on that.
And if you put Ernest Goes to Camp in the middle, as where those two shape off from, you can see how it detracts from the original format and setup, and where these movies differ. And we'll go into it further with Ernest Goes to School, as we did with Ernest Saves Christmas, and you might be able to see where I'm coming from. But that is my epiphany, wherein neither movie culminated in something that went up and improved on the formula, but detracted from the formula in separate ways.
Okay, yeah. I totally get that. Alright, so what are you giving it?
So I gave it a 2 out of 5, a 4 out of 10, the same score I gave Ernest Saves Christmas.
Okay, I think that I totally agree with your analysis of this. I do think that I ultimately just end up liking Saves Christmas more. I think I'm more tolerant of them veering in that, wrong direction than I am of them veering in this wrong direction. But I agree with your sentiment.
Well, I'm glad that we're in agreement. We might not even need our special guest later on. We shall see. So, we've rated it. Let's get into it. Let's get into the meat of this sandwich. Let's talk about Ernest Going to School. As always, let's start with the opening. How do you feel about the opening of this Ernest movie, Nate?
I'll tell you this, Josh, I don't remember it. Does this have an opening credits? What I'm remembering is the beginning of the movie is this, sequence, introducing us to the school, where there's, this school fight song about their team, the Muskrats. But I don't necessarily... Yep. But it doesn't have, a opening credit sequence like the other movies, does it?
No, it does not, and that's a very low point for me. So the song that you're referring to, I think is called Hail to the Muskrats.
Mm-hmm.
The song of their sports team, the Muskrats. The song of their people. And we see the Chickasaw Falls school location, and we get, word credits where we just see the names of the actors, etc., and so forth. But we don't... This isn't an Ernest opening. This isn't what we've come to enjoy and appreciate from the Ernest film. You know, we've come off the high of Once There Was a Man Named Worrell.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm surprised that there's nothing like that here when we just got off of a film where the high point of it, essentially, was the opening credits. And then they just completely abandoned what's been a recurring, element of... Well, I guess Goes to Camp doesn't really have one. In a way that,
no, but Goes to Camp is the baseline.
Yeah. This one makes more sense as a... no. I was going to say this makes more sense as a sequel to Goes to Camp than it does as, like, a sequel to the other Ernest films that have come in between. But it would be a really weird sequel to Goes to Camp. It would be very much like The Secret of the Ooze or Gremlins 2, The New Batch to Goes to Camp's Ninja Turtles and Gremlins.
I mean, I actually agree with that, though. That's, like, part of my theory. You know, if you think about one going to the left, one going to the right, Ernest Goes to School could be a straight-up sequel. It's just in the other direction.
Yeah. But it's also that sort of, for me, right, like, with both of those examples, those are ones where I like the denser, wackier sequel more than the original. But I definitely don't feel that way here.
Me either. I think I've rated Ernest Goes to Camp the highest so far.
Goes to Camp is my second favorite so far, but my favorite is Goes to Jail. Like, Goes to Jail is kind of that too, right? Like, it is kind of the denser, wackier sequel, but it's just much more focused and better executed.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. But let's get back to the Ernest Goes to School. So we don't really have an opening. What a bummer.
Yeah.
Now, this credit sequence is also taking place over us seeing Ernest. And what is Ernest doing as we take a look at this titular, wonderful character that we've known to grow and love?
Does it start with him fixing the toilets? No.
No.
Oh, he's just but he's like walking around. He's got like a waxer. What is he doing? He's got some kind of machine, right? Oh my god, I cannot hold the shape of this movie in my head at all, Josh. You're gonna have to walk me through like a child. Like, I'll remember things as they happen, but like everything is jumbled up in my brain. Worse so than when we were doing Scared Stupid.
Oh man, this is gonna be a treat. All right. So first things first, I'm the realist. Shout out to Iggy Azalea.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly,
she's not in this movie.
Ernest goes. No, she's not. Maybe I should change my score down lower. Anyway, Ernest is wandering through the school as we see over these credits, just trailing some kind of contraption behind him that looks like if you turned a beer keg into a vacuum.
Yeah. It's
classic Ernest craftsmanship thing that he just is dragging around the entire campus. He's waving to students. He's saying hi to everybody. There's a radio DJ on the intercom.
Yeah, this kid ends up being like one of the supporting characters, even though there's really not much to him. But he is they definitely told this kid, try to be Robin Williams.
For sure. And Ernest eventually makes his way to the football stadium, where he gets trampled. He is getting trampled by an incoming team of players heading for the locker room, who just seemingly don't give a shit that they are trampling over a human being.
But he's smooshed completely flat, like a cartoon man, like a Mr. Bill, if you will. And then that's like immediately, like that very early on, the movie establishes like if this isn't a cartoon world, Ernest is at least a cartoon, more so than he's ever been in any of the other movies. Like, he is just fully a Looney Tune raw in flesh and blood here.
100%, because when we actually see him, and it pans down to Ernest's body that has been trampled, we see, I want to say like a crash test dummy body with like the head removed, and then we see Ernest's face poking out from what is clearly a rubber like covering that he pokes his face through. That is supposed to be the street or the ground they're walking on.
Yeah, it's sort of like, if you go to, like, an amusement park or fucking a pumpkin patch, and there's, like, that wooden cutout where you put your head through the hole, and it's like, oh, I'm a buff guy or a goat or something. It's like they made one of those, but of Ernest's flat body, and then they laid it down on the ground, and he got under it and poked his face through the hole. That's how they sort of achieve this effect.
And let me tell you, it looks awful. like the way I described it is the way it looks.
Yeah, I thought that it was charmingly cruddy. Like, they had a problem, and they figured out how to solve it. And sure, it's not Industrial Light and Magic. It's not the Jim Henson Creature Shop. But we got what they were going for.
I think that's a fair assessment.
It's not Weta. I don't know any other effects shops. I can't keep doing this.
It's okay. So yeah, that's a fair assessment. Especially, we've probably talked about this a bunch in previous episodes, but this movie had a limited theatrical release and was straight to DVD, so it definitely feels straight to DVD.
No, sir, this went straight to VHS.
Oh shit! I'm showing my millennial side.
So just for background, this was one of the ones that I would watch on VHS, like with my dad back in the day. And as a kid, I thought this movie was extremely funny, and liked it a lot. It does not necessarily hold up.
Definitely not as an adult, but maybe it does hold up as a kid's movie.
I don't know. I guess I could find it. I don't even really know a kid young enough where I could show him this movie.
Take a note, Nate. We need, for the podcast, you to find a kid, show him this movie, and did we ever buy that new door for our secret room?
I just put a poster from Speed Racer up over it.
Perfect. So take a note. You're in charge of that for the next week. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Ernest recovers from this tragedy, a la Mr. Bill, just moves on, and he takes his contraption to the football player locker room, where he does classic Ernest, giving them advice that they don't need, which is great. He tries to, quote, give them the benefit of his vast years of experience and open the vault of giant football savvy. The players, which include lovable goof Will Sasso, and another character actor I don't recognize, who become recurring characters as bullies for Ernest. They call him a Tomato Head.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Burn. That definitely makes sense. And tell him that they don't need his advice because they've won every single game that year. And Ernest says, even though you won, you gotta do this and do that. And they laugh at him and give him the old, get out of here, you crazy buffoon.
Yeah, so Will Sasso he does not do, I mean, he's a bully, but he's like, this is a young Will Sasso. This is not a real showcase of his talents. But I do want to, shout out to Will Sasso because he's great, and I'm excited every time I see him in anything.
Agreed. I enjoy the presence of Will Sasso.
But this thing here, where he gives them the advice, starts a precedent in this movie, where it's like, for some things, the movie is very concerned with trying to cleanly set up and pay off things. Mm-hmm. And then for other things, it doesn't give a shit about setup and payoff. So this first scene, he gives them the advice, and this sets up this thing where he's like, they used to call me Crazy Legs. And that is paid off. But then lots of other stuff in the movie does not get that care and attention. It's just kind of tossed off and left to flounder in the void.
This is true. So this is the first of many. So then we have this, again, another, pinpoint of my theory from earlier. We have this thing where Ernest transitions from talking to the jocks to either talking to himself or talking to the audience.
Yeah, it's unclear if he could be talking to himself, he could be talking to the audience, he could think he's still talking to the jocks, but they're just not paying attention to him. But he goes off on his own and is monologuing while he does a comedy slapstick routine where he's fixing the toilets, which is very reminiscent of the sort of opening scene after the flashback of Ernest Goes to Camp, where he's talking directly to the audience. And he has a comedy slapstick sequence while he tries to fix some toilets.
Mm-hmm. Again, classic way to view as a direct sequel to Ghost Camp.
Or they ran out of ideas.
Or they ran out of ideas. I will also concede that. So Ernest, while he talks to the audience about solving football problems, goes towards a leaky faucet and decides that to fix it, he needs to just cover it in black tape.
Yes. Which seems like a thing that should be a setup with a payoff, where he does something with tape later. That doesn't happen, though.
Nope. He then goes off to the side, does this, like... It was hard to catch. It was like he does this, like, accent of some character he's trying to pull, and I thought it was, like, about Crazy Legs, but I'm not sure. Did you catch that?
No, not at all.
Okay, moving on. The sink threatens to explode, and then the entire piping comes out, and then he has to push it in, and then push it out, and then the toilets move with it. And then the sink pipe explodes as Ernest is rambling on. He does a funny bit where he has to march through the pushing water by, like, you know, putting his hands forward, and then uses a plunger to cover it. Does a classic snicker. And then the wall starts exploding and pushes him into a stall, which then also explodes. And here is something that baffled both of us as we were watching, where it cuts to directly above the stall, and we see a fountain of water shooting up Ernest's own hat, when previously he was just sitting upon a toilet.
Yeah, like the hat is bouncing up and down on the top of the water spout. And so we were like, is this coming out of his mouth? Is the joke supposed to be that the water shot up all the way through his butt, through his mouth? Is it supposed to be shooting out of the top of his head like fully a cartoon character? Or what is happening? And they never cut back to Ernest in that sequence, so that is a totally unresolved mystery of how that water spout is interacting with Ernest's physical body.
I mean, either it came up from the entirety of his back and pushed the hat up, or it came out of his mouth, or it's really hard to imagine what the hell actually happened. So many questions.
But they judiciously cut away from that.
They cut away back to the radio disc jockey, who, like you mentioned earlier, his name is Rodney. He does a bit about a missing snake, and does this I think reference classic radio TV shows. Listen to me. Millennial Shide is showing again.
At least you didn't say podcasts.
Radio shows where it's like, oh no, a dramatic thing is happening. Tune in next week to see if I survive this snake.
Yeah, but there's no we don't get to see him fight a snake or anything.
No, because there's not actually.
He's just doing a bit.
Yeah, which I thought it was fine. That's a good reference to that kind of stuff. We need radio shows like that back in our lives, I think.
But they want this character to be funny so bad. He is clearly supposed to be the other source of comedy. Well, there's sort of three sources of characters that are supposed to be the comedic initiators in this movie, and it's Ernest, the science teachers, and this radio host guy, and he's doing this hey, eyebrow raisy stand-up comedy thing, and it sucks. It's not good.
No, it's not good, and I don't know if it's meant to be not good because he's supposed to be a loser kid, but then he's never picked on throughout the movie, so I have no idea.
But that was such a thing in the 90s, was this person that talks like they're doing cheesy stand-up comedy all the time. I mean, the Ninja Turtles are kind of that, or Mikey specifically. Mm-hmm. And almost none of those characters are appealing. At least he doesn't say anything gross, but it's just every time he opens his mouth, he's I'm doing a joke. And it's stop, please.
So this leads to another overshot of the school, students walking through the halls, and then it cuts to the principal meeting with a guy whose name that we never learn, I think, but is Wikipedia and IMDb listed as Mr. Axwell.
Yeah, he must just... there are lots of characters who we just did not know their names while we were watching the movie, because either they said it and it was just so tossed off that we missed it, or they just never say their names. Mm-hmm. That's most characters.
Which is bad.
In this movie.
That's really bad. Speaking of which, the principal is Principal Proctor, who is played by well-known actor...
French Tickner. A man whose name is very close to French Tickler. But he's not a porn actor, as far as I can tell. He does a bunch of voiceover stuff, and he's like, was in an episode of X-Files, and an episode of Psych. I feel like there's I assume a lot of Canadians in this movie. I know one of the other characters, I believe the bully, like, I looked at his IMDb page and had like a total like nostalgia trip back when I realized that he was in an episode of Big Wolf on Campus. Do you remember that show? Did you watch Big Wolf on Campus?
No, I've never watched that show.
Do you remember its existence at all?
No, is that like one of those Teen Wolf things?
It was like an unofficial Teen Wolf. It was like I believe it was an ABC Family show, maybe, that was like a sort of sitcom about a teen that becomes a werewolf and his friend, and they fight every week another monster shows up and they like fight the monster. And the werewolf effects they just gave him like big eyebrows and fake teeth.
Oh wow, that's awful.
Yeah, that guy, the bully, plays a character named Rob, who is a monster. Do you want to guess what monster he is?
He's a zombie.
Yes. The episode is literally called Rob, Zombie.
Oh god, that's fucking awful.
I loved that show, man. I'm waiting for it to show up on streaming somewhere if it's not already. That's got to be like on Tubi or some shit, right?
One would hope, because now I want to cringe watch it. Anyway, getting back to the original point, this is the second Ernest film done in Canada after Rides Again.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense.
So the principal proctor is meeting with this Mr. Axwell character about cutting costs for the school. He wants to remove the school, calling it obsolete. Later in the film, we'll find out that he wants to merge it with another school, and then that's it. That's his plan. It doesn't. There's no really like concrete reasoning behind what he's trying to do.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Like, why does he want this? Why? Like, well, you're going to get to it in a second, but like, why does he bring up Ernest? This character is baffling. It almost would have made more sense if they used the same reveal they will eventually use in Slam Dunk Ernest, and we're just like, this guy's the devil.
Don't spoil next week's episode.
I'm sorry, I already did. I'm sorry. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's pretty clear, like, immediately, as soon as that guy shuts up.
For sure. But the thing is, about this character, is they never really clearly define his goals. Like, in Ernest Goes to Camp, they have the evil guy who wants to get the land of the camp to, do his landscaping and what have you. And that's, like, a clearly defined business thing. Where this is just, like, he just is really into merging the schools, and we don't know why. And then he tries to find, like, the weakest point of the school to give him a reason to do this, where he picks on he establishes a new rule where all faculty staff must have their high school education.
Yeah, and the principal's like, well, that's no problem. We were all highly accredited. And then he's like, Then he calls out Ernest specifically. He's got a list of all of them. And he's like, oh, you've got this Ernest P. Worrell working for you. He doesn't have his high school diploma. And it's like, why do you care?
Ernest, but he's not a...
He doesn't get to...
He gets cut off.
What do we think he was going to say? He says Ernest, I believe he's cut off on he's, or he's just, something like that. So, I think we both assumed he was just going to say, he's just Ernest, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I was doing this movie, I would just have him, like, I wouldn't have him be cut off. I would have him just be at a loss for words. I'd have him be like, well, Ernest, he's just, he's Ernest.
But yeah, it's the thing that I'm hung up on is just like, why? Like, it's clearly part of his plan is to get Ernest fired, and I don't know how or why he thinks that's going to affect the school. It's also, he has the energy and, like, the style of performance and delivery of, like, a businessman that's, like, trying, like the land developer that was trying to shut down the camp. But it's like, right. He's not going to make any money off of this. He just works for the school board. Like, he's still going to get paid if they don't shut down the school. Like, is he going to get a raise if they don't have to pay for the school? They should have had, like, one scene that established that, like, he went to high school with Ernest or something. And then it was like, oh, okay. I understand why he hates Ernest and the school he works at. Like, that, I felt like would have been enough, but no, we don't get that.
No, we don't get anything. So, Mr. Axwell gives the principal a probation period for them to find something worth saving, and then decides to leave, saying that Ernest needs to get his graduate high school diploma. And then he runs into Ernest. And here's where, like, that flashback would have been great.
Yeah.
You know, if, like, we had Ernest run into Mr. Axwell, and then there'd just be that flashback of Ernest, I don't know, fucking up Mr. Axwell's shit at high school, just because, not because he's, like, a dick, but because he's Ernest. You know, like, he accidentally, like, sets the water fountain loose and stumbles back into Mr. Axwell as he's asking out a girl he really likes, causing him to trip over her and embarrassing the crap out of him. You know, something classic Ernest.
Mm-hmm, for sure, yeah. But no, we don't get that.
No, but we do get something that I enjoyed. So Ernest brings his contraption, and he asks Mr. Axwell he wants to get a demonstration of what he calls a Supremovac as Mr. Axwell storms off. And then Ernest plugs it in and is about to use it, and then it does this, like, ear-piercing, like, whine that is incredibly loud and uncomfortably close, like that one movie.
Yes. That movie.
And the principal comes out, yells at him, and says he needs to talk to him. And Ernest is trying to unplug the plug out of the wall, but he can't. Classic Ernest. He rips out the plug, the machine's still going. So this happens, and I in my notes I described this in a specific way, and I'm just gonna read it, and you can react to it, and we'll see how this goes.
All right, I'll do my best to react to it.
Ernest's solution to this vacuum, still being loud as hell and not being able to be unplugged, goes full rampage and destroys it like he just found it fucking his wife.
That's not inaccurate, but I think what's going on here is the machine is still making this noise, and so he is frantically disassembling it, trying to find the specific piece that makes the noise. So he keeps, like, tearing parts of the machine apart and then not finding what's making the noise until he gets down into the center of the engine and opens it up, and there's, like, a little metal whirring motor that's making the whining noise. And here, let's have a little game for the audience. If you haven't watched the movie, we'll pause for a second, and then you try and guess how Ernest solves the problem of this small machine making a noise.
I'm going to insert a Jeopardy noise here.
Did you say he shoves it in his mouth? If you did, you're correct. Because that's what he does.
This time, he spits it out after having it in his mouth for a second, and definitely not working. And it goes flying across the hall, and we'll see that later.
Yeah, this is another one thing that is inexplicably, this is another element that is set up and paid off. For some reason, they felt the need that this had to be resolved. But other things, no. But this, yes.
So, Ernest goes to meet with the principal, and the principal tells him he needs to get a degree or leave or, be fired. And Ernest freaks out. Understandably, I guess. Where he says, this is his life, this is his spiritual commitment to my job. I need this is my job. Please, I can't. I need this. And then, or he has to go back to school, and then there's this classic, oh no, thunder and lightning. Not back to school.
Yeah, he looks directly at the camera when this happens. This is clearly like, this is for the trailer. Because it's like, he already works at the school. Like, can't be that bad. It's not like he even has to go anywhere different. He's already going to the school every day. And they're very generous, because presumably they're still paying him the whole time where he's just being a student there. Because he never seems like, he's never, like, worried that he's not going to have enough money or anything.
That is true. And it's like, he knows the school. He's worked at it, presumably for a while, considering that he's very attached to this position.
Yeah, but also, whenever he interacts with the teachers later in the movie, they don't seem like they're not reacting to him like he's their coworker that they've seen every day for the past couple of years.
No, they react to him like. Well, I mean, there's one teacher in particular that reacts to him like he's Ernest, but the rest of them like barely give him any notice. So Ernest is announced as a new student over the PA by our radio disc jockey friend, and then there's a weird cut to a couple of characters. Nate, this is your area of expertise. Do you want to introduce these two characters that we just cut to right now, who comment on their poor Ernest not standing a chance?
Yeah, so they are played by two people that we are very well familiar with. Does that make sense? Is that a thing a person says?
I will allow it.
I mean, okay, so traditionally, as the old ways would dictate from the old country, Ernest would have two other characters that hang out together that would be in the Ernest movie. And by and large, those two characters in their ideal form are played by Gaylord Sartain and Bill Burke, or Bill Berge. We have never actually figured out how you're supposed to say that guy's name. And, that's the archetypal Chuck and Bobby. Here we do have... in the previous movie, we were missing both of them. In the movie before that, we were missing Gaylord Sartain, but we did have Bobby, Bill, as Bobby. Here we do have Bill. He is Bobby, but his partner is played by Linda Cash, who people will remember as being the Professor Mellon's wife from the previous movie. Here they're two German scientists whose names are Goethe and Bobby. And
yes,
they're the science teachers, because we do see them teach a class at one point, briefly. But they're mostly concerned with performing experiments that expand brain power. Bobby is mostly silent, as he always is. And Goethe speaks with a wildly shifting accent that just kind of skips across all of Europe. It's mostly German, but it kind of goes everywhere.
It's definitely rooted in German, but you can hear the Russian and the Polish and the other stuff just slip in there every now and then.
Yeah, she kind of does she sort of does the cartoony German thing where you pronounce the th as v's, but she also does a kind of an Elmer Fudd thing where she pronounces r's as w's, but not all of them.
It's very inconsistent. And I don't know if that's a comment on her or if that's just how she was told to do it. Because this movie's so wacky. I was wondering if that's on purpose.
I'm going to say this, though, because it sounds like we're dunking on her. I actually think this is a pretty funny performance. It's very broad. It's very cartoony. It's very, not even sitcom-y, but, kids sitcom-y. But, it's funny. She's got a good screen presence. Yeah, but it is a very inconsistent accent, and these are very weird characters. We commented that they are the most, out of all of these sort of pairs, they are the most similar to the Exeronius guys from Goes to Camp.
Yes, and this cutaway happens later, but we can talk about it now. There is just a random cutaway to them later on in the movie where there's a kid doing a science project where he is using some kind of battery, I don't remember what the charge is, to make a live or dead frog, I could not tell, leg twitch with electricity, and that's a science project. And in the background, these two are like, that's it. The AC charge. That's the ingredient we were missing in our science project.
Yeah, again, I feel like this is maybe an argument for them having run out of ideas, because that is literally just the Exeronius thing again, but less funny. I think that, I want to say this, I love Chuck and Bobby, obviously. But I feel like the continued absence of Gaylord Sartain really puts a spotlight on the fact that he was kind of the MVP of that group. His sort of big, sort of theatrical, kind of old school, sort of Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy type energy works much better with Bobby than the other people they've paired him up with. Do you agree?
I think I agree with that. Although I will admit, I think, we had Gaylord Sartain replaced by another character in Ernest Scared Stupid, and we weren't a fan of that guy. But I think Linda Cash does a good job.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing with both of those characters, with Linda Cash as Gerda and whoever the fuck that other guy was as Tom Tulip.
Mm-hmm.
They're both what they're doing is that they're like big motor mouth type characters. Whereas Gaylor Sartain's thing was he had a little bit of that, but a lot of his stuff was like reactive. And so he kind of let Bobby sort of be the wacky one, and then he would have big over the top reactions to him, which I think works better because Bobby is a silent character for the most part. Having these very talky characters paired up with him means he just kind of recedes into the background.
This is true. I will definitely agree with that. Especially with the Gaylor 13 like classic eye roll and like facial expressions that he was actually really good at.
Yeah, exactly. And also he delivers my favorite line in the entire franchise.
Oh, he's polarized. So we're straying away. Let's get back on track. We're definitely going to talk about these two characters more. But we cut to Ernest getting to his locker 152, my little sanctuary, as he calls it. And then we get introduced to a friend of Ernest, which is never really explained how they're friends, but they're friends. Where this red-haired nerd-like kid with big glasses comes up and says, "Hey Ernest, hope you're ready. Let the games begin. Good luck." And his name is Donald. And I think we actually get his name.
Yeah. I think he's like the one where we definitely get his name. Yeah, that's his friend. It seems like they're already friends.
Mm-hmm.
This movie does not a great job. Like, it gives him a supporting cast, a la Scared Stupid. Like, he has 3 kids, obviously they're older, they're high school students, that he's friends with who, help him out in this movie. But they're much less efficient and effective at establishing them and their relationship to Ernest than they are with the kids in Scared Stupid.
For sure. I mean, it's a great comparison, too, because, like, he had, like, 3 kids that he palled around with in Scared Stupid, and he has 3 kids now. One of them, is Donald, is set up as, like, his friend. And then the other 2 aren't really set up at all.
They just show up at one point, and it's just like, oh, I guess they're friends with Ernest?
Yeah. And one of them makes no sense when this happens, and we'll explain that. Because this is one of those things that is kind of set up and then never paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So this leads to Ernest. He has an agenda in front of him. He's trying to figure out where to go, like he's never fucking worked there a day in his life. And he gets picked on by Will Sasso and the other guy, the other main
Rob Zombie.
Football jerk, Rob Zombie. Who grabs his agenda paper, tosses it around like a monkey in the middle, and then he eventually loses it. And by the time like he picks it up again or searches for it, everybody's run to class and he doesn't know where to go. So Ernest is turned around, he's lost, he's left alone in the hallway. He does this like echoing, "Hello, where is math class?" And no one responds. And then this happens, and I think it's only appropriate that I turn to you, my fellow friend and compatriot Nate Osterman, to just discuss this.
Yeah, so we learned that Ernest, when he was building his character, he took the Mysterious Stranger perk. Because a cowboy ghost? All of a sudden, it's like, they don't do the... But they basically do that. And there's, like, fucking tumbleweeds, and there's, like, obvious, like, backdrops hung up of, like, a southwestern landscape. And there is a silhouetted cowboy on a horse... who I believe in the credits is, and this is a very good fake cowboy name, is credited as Squint Westward, who is played by the same guy who plays the cowboy in Indian in the Cupboard. Mm-hmm. So I guess this guy just had a minor career playing cowboys. And he's like, he talks in kind of like a Clint Eastwood impression, as his name would suggest, and he directs Ernest to his class, and then disappears and is never referenced or shown again.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling.
It's one of the most baffling things that happens in the movie. Again, this seems like a thing that is a setup that's going to get paid off. It is not. They do not pay it off. I don't know what this is or why it's in the movie. It's extremely weird. And I like we were just both going like the whole time we were watching it, because like what is this? Why did the cowboy ghost just show up and direct him to class? Is this supposed to be like inside Ernest's head? Is this like, he does the John Wayne impression, right? Like, is this like what he sees? Is this like the cowboy within appearing as a vision to help? What is this?
This is my final pitch for our end of episode thing, where it's Ernest the Cowboy Within. That's my movie. I don't know what the crap this is. This is just unerringly perplexing. And especially, it's not done well either. You might have mentioned this, but like the backdrop that like shows the desert is clearly just a banner. You could see the creases at the top, like they just did not give a shit.
I actually disagree with you, because I think it is supposed to look stagey. It's supposed to look like this weird thing is intruding on the school hallway. I think you're supposed to be able to like see the lockers and stuff. I kind of like that aesthetic of it. If this was like a gimmick of the movie where it was like Ernest's imagination or this fantasy world or something popped in and was like a consistent thing, I would be like on board with it. My problem is just that it happens once and never again.
See, the way I was thinking about it, and you're probably right in that aspect, the way I was thinking about it is I was tying it back into the Ernest peering his head through the asphalt, where it's just these effects that are just not held to high standards.
Yeah, well, actually, comparing it to the Ernest getting flattened, speaking of that, it's like, that's the thing with this movie, is there are parts that are clearly, like you were talking about, at some point before, where we're clearly seeing things through Ernest's eyes. There's a part later on where he has like a test and he sees the teacher as like a Nazi and a monster. And then there are things like the him getting flattened, where it's like, I don't know on what layer of reality that's supposed to be taking place. Did he literally get flattened? And this is the same thing, where it's like, what? It's like, is this in Ernest's head? But it kind of can't be, right? Because he doesn't know where he's going. Is this a real person that's just talking to him, who he's seeing as this, like, that must be what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to just be like a rando came up and helped him, and Ernest was so grateful that he saw this person as like this brave cowboy that was standing up for him, right? But even then, I feel like I'm grasping at straws.
Yeah, I think there's no right answer to this.
This is like, I can't. This movie is like, it's sand slipping through my fingers. I can't hold it. I feel like Ernest fighting the toilet spray, trying to make sense of what this movie is and what it's trying to do.
Oh, that is a great image. The image of just like, it's like a meme, but like where Ernest fighting the toilet spray, and the toilet spray is the Ernest films. I'm gonna have that image in my head forever. So he gets to the right class with directions from this John Wayne cowboy, and it's a math class, and there's like a blackboard problem going on, which is indicated by the teacher saying the words "blackboard problem" as Ernest heads in. This is another thing that'll pay off later.
I didn't pick up on that.
Ernest comes in, and he's in his class with the jocks, and the jocks, start snickering themselves, trying to do a prank on Ernest, and they take out what can only be described as a comically large golden thumbtack and put it on Ernest's seat. So Ernest will get pricked in the butt, have to stand up, and then the teacher will mistake that for Ernest volunteering to do the math problem on the board, which is about trains and stuff. It's like a train problem. There's like a specific, like, one train's going this way at 45 miles per hour sort of thing.
Yeah, and so Ernest has to answer this question, and he starts babbling about like the relative weights of different kinds of citrus fruit and how that would affect the speed of the train that's carrying it. And
the sick migrant workers that pick the fruit, and the fat orchard rats that might have eaten the fruit.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know. This part's kind of funny. But yeah,
no,
he filibusters about all of these like extraneous details that could minutely affect the speed of the train instead of answering the question.
Right. And then he accidentally sits on what I guess is glue, covers the teacher in glue, knocks the teacher over as he's trying to clean up the glue into a drawer that just has sequins in it that falls to the on top of the
Oh,
teacher. So basically, like a tarred and feathered thing.
yes, but it's much more than sequins. It's like spangly confetti, but it's all shaped like numbers. It's like just like 6s and 8s and stuff. Which I guess, I don't know, does he have that to like throw around to celebrate if someone... Look, if Ernest answered the math problem correctly, would he have showered him with number confetti?
I don't know. It's baffling that it's even there.
Yeah, it could have just been like pencil shavings or something, but they gave him like math confetti for some reason. Also, if you're imagining what the glue looks like, and you're imagining that it looks like something else, you're right. And then that's all I'm going to say about it.
I wasn't going to say that. Okay, cool.
But do you disagree?
No.
Okay.
No, I do not disagree. Anyway, Ernest tries to, like, the teacher yells at Ernest to sit down, and then Ernest helps the teacher sit in his chair before Ernest goes to sit down, as like a, like pull out his chair for him, kind of like, I'm sorry thing. And then the teacher sits down but gets glued to the chair, and then also Ernest's hand gets glued to the chair in the classic Ernest bit where he has to remove his hand while trying to sit down. And the way he removes his hand is kicking the chair forward as he throws the teacher into the wall, and his hand comes off with most of the chair attached to it.
Yeah, he's got like a hand-shaped cutout of the chair stuck to his hand, perfectly, because that's how that works.
I mean, it's classic Ernest shenanigans. Even though the stuff that happens to the teacher is bonkers, it still, like, I guess kind of works, because this is Ernest, and this is what Ernest does, and it would have fit perfectly with, like, our envisioned flashback for the way we wanted it to happen with Mr. Axwell. Where it's just like, he's well-meaning, and he's trying to do the right thing, but shit just happens because he's Ernest.
But yeah, but this is this thing with the teacher is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, this teacher doesn't react to him like he knows him.
No, this one kind of does. I mean, he definitely, like, is already annoyed at Ernest when Ernest walks in. I guess because Ernest comes in late and is super loud. They do a bit where every time Ernest's foot makes a step, it makes it, like, a very noticeable squeak. But maybe I'm just, like confusing that recognition for just him being annoyed. I don't know.
Maybe. But it was like, okay, let's say you're right, though. Then that makes Axwell's plan more confusing, because, like, it doesn't seem like the school likes Ernest. Like, if he was beloved, then it would make sense that he would want to try and get rid of him, because, like, oh, maybe he's helping the school be successful. Wouldn't this movie make more sense if instead of this inexplicable outsider, the villain was the principal, and he was trying to, or we could even get more complicated and have Axwell there and have the principal be there, and they want Ernest to get fired because he's making the school worse, and, like, that's going to save the school. Like, maybe on one end we have a character working to save the school by removing Ernest, and then on the other end we have Ernest working to save the school and his job. But maybe that's too complicated for this movie to handle.
I mean, I kind of like that aspect, but the principal is definitely on Ernest's side and seems to have an affinity for him.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
I don't know.
But yeah, so that's the math sequence. It's all right. There's some funny stuff. It's solid Ernest nonsense.
Yep, and now we get to more solid Ernest nonsense, more of the same, as Ernest goes to gym. He meets up with a character that will get paid off later in one scene, as introduces Coach Deckard, who instructs him to volunteer to go into the school's actual real wrestling ring that it has for some reason.
Yeah, they got a squared circle. They got a full on with turnbuckles and ropes professional wrestling ring. Like, you know, high school wrestling, they do it on a mat on the floor. No, but they got a full ring with turnbuckles and everything. And then Ernest gets in the ring, and a luchador comes out to fight him.
Now this is interesting. This is one of the few African American characters in this movie. Introduces Coach Carson, who comes out after Ernest trips over the ropes to get into the ring, where he tells Donald that he's going to move slowly so he can observe his cat-like moves, and then trips over himself and gets in the ring. And then this luchador costumed Coach Carson comes out acting like a crazy person.
Yeah, he's literally doing the George the Animal Steel bit where he gets in and he bites the turnbuckle, or he bites the the turnbuckle cover, a la George the Animal Steel, R.I.P.
Right, and then Ernest tries to imitate it and loses a tooth, which I like that bit.
I think the sequence is funny and honestly made me wish we had gotten heavyweight Ernest or something where he
Luchador Ernest.
Or just the wrestling Ernest movie. I feel like it could have been really good. That's a perfect venue for slapstick and stuff. It seems like a no-brainer.
Ernest Libre.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But yeah, we would get a slapstick wrestling sequence after this, which I'm a big nerd, and it did annoy me at one point where they misidentify I believe it is a crossbody as a atomic drop, which is they are not the same move.
This is correct. There's a point where Ernest runs around in circles for a while, but then he gets clotheslined. I had in my notes as a fake atomic drop because I'm not up to date on my wrestling knowledge as you are, Nate.
Yes, but you have seen you did go to a taping of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, that was awesome. Wish we could do that again. Anyway, so the drop misses, the fake drop misses. Then Ernest gets pinned while saying that he is the other guy pinned. He gets the coach in a pinky hold and does the snicker, and then gets picked up and thrown into a basketball net that is insanely long. It's like a person-length net.
Yeah, I guess the idea is he stretched it out somehow, but yeah, the net is long enough to fully engulf Ernest, and that is the end of his match. Yes. Yes,
and it does foreshadow Slam Dunk Ernest.
Yeah. But again, that the coach comes back. The original, the head coach,
Coach Deckard.
Yeah, but the one that he wrestles does not come back.
No, not at all. This is the only time we see him.
But yeah, you're right. There are I believe 3 black characters in this movie. It's this guy, a boring teacher later, and then at the very end, a character that I think is supposed to be the superintendent.
Oh, I forgot about her.
Some sort of authority figure.
No, there's 4 then.
Oh, who am I missing?
There's a football jock that literally growls at Ernest.
Oh, yeah. Well, that character doesn't have any lines, so...
Neither does Coach Carson.
Yeah, but his presence is undeniable.
All right.
He speaks with his body.
So this transitions to Ernest not going to science class, but just meeting up with the 2 science teachers, Bobby and Gerda, who want to show him something. They're apparently friends with Ernest.
I guess?
I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but they seem friendly towards Ernest, and Ernest is friendly towards them, who show them something for Ernest's eyes only, how they're working on this equation to have a pig solve math problems, I guess. I don't really understand it.
No, me neither. They have a potbelly pig, which is adorable. I love this pig. He's no rimshot, but I am a fan of this pig. And,
do you remember his name?
His name is Mowgli. There should be more funny pigs in movies. Pigs are great. But I don't know, I don't know if pigs are hard to direct or something. They're supposed to be smart, so I assume it can't be that much harder than directing a dog.
I mean, we've all seen Police Academy, so we know the pigs are funny in movies.
Good point, yes, you're correct. What if they made a movie where Babe joined the police force? What if it was Babe, Pig on the force? Pig on the beat.
I think that's 2 on the nose.
Anyway.
Or should I say 2 on the snout?
So the visual of this is actually kind of one of my favorite things in the movie, because their setup is they've got this little potbelly pig, and he's wearing big headphones for people, and those are hooked up to an Apple IIe monitor. Where they're showing him the math problems. So I guess he can read numbers? And the pig is it seems he's very well behaved. He has the headphones on the whole time. And a pig in headphones, pretty funny image.
Mm-hmm.
But Ernest is so bad at math that he makes the pig bad at math by giving him, like, the wrong answers. And it makes them think that the experiment is a failure, even though clearly the pig is probably smart enough to solve these math problems.
Yeah, and I quote, "Why, Bobby? Why we fail? Facepalm, why?" And then it just transitions to Ernest and band.
Yeah.
This is a weird in-between scene that happens in between Ernest going to 2 of his classes. It just, I don't know. They were like, we need to put the scene somewhere, and they just shove it in here.
It should have just been in the beginning of the movie, right? It should have been before he gets called into the office. He's, like, cleaning the school, and he stops in to clean that room or whatever, and he talks to what would at that point be his colleagues.
Right. It'd be like, hey, Ernest, hey, Eunice, over here, check this out.
Yeah. Or they could have even had a thing where he's like, because he's the janitor, where he's like, "Oh, guys, how many times I gotta tell you can't have a pig in the school?" And it's like he's like, that would have been good. There's a lot of things they could have done. This movie makes a lot of inexplicable choices.
I mean, if it was up to me, if I was writing this movie, I would definitely have had it in the forefront where he's the janitor, and I would make the pig his nemesis. Where, like, the pig is constantly, like, fucking things up in the school, and he has to catch it. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever watched Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There's the janitor with, like, the weasel.
Oh, I thought you were going to bring up Caddyshack with the gopher.
Oh, yeah, similar vibe. Where it's just like, this is his nemesis, and it fits with Ernest's complicated relationship with animals.
Yeah, and then we could have gotten a part where the pig wears sunglasses and dances or something, or just wears sunglasses. Then it would have been like, they could have had a sort of like funny, faux emotional moment at the end where the pig comes back to help him.
They kind of do.
Yeah, but it's like he and the pig have been on the same page the entire time. Like, the hitman and the pig are at least neutral acquaintances. But what if they had been enemies, and then the pig had stepped in to save Ernest, and he would have then he could have been like, "Oh, I love you, pig. I'm gonna let you eat as many snacks out of the vending machine as you want." Like, that could have been great.
Yeah. Alas. So we get to Ernest going to band, and we have he's sitting next to his friend Donald, and Donald is checking out this girl that he's interested in. Her name, which we never find out in the movie. We have to look it up again on IMDb and Wikipedia to find out it is Maisie, played by the lovely Sarah Chalke, known to Adult Swim's Rick and Morty as Beth, and Scrubs actors Elliot, and a bunch of other wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Except for when she played the villain in the Psych movie, and it was goddamn awful.
Two connections to Psych in this movie. The other thing I was going to say is, weirdly, in the credits, she doesn't have an E at the end of her last name.
Huh.
It's just Chalk, like, whereas everything I've seen her in besides this, she's got an E at the end of her name.
Must be a typo.
Does he ever get a pet pig in Psych? That seems like that would have been a slam dunk, Ernest. A slam dunk move for Psych, to give him a little pig.
He has a cat in the first season. I don't remember them ever interacting with a pig, but they might have. I'd have to.
I'm just saying, imagine, what's his friend, Gus? Is that his friend's name?
Yeah.
Imagine that guy interacting with a potbelly pig. That's gold.
That is gold, but there is one episode where he interacts with a polar bear, and it's absolute gold. I love that episode.
Alright, so enough about me pitching animal sidekicks for a canceled TV show.
Anyway.
I didn't really watch that much. Okay.
It's a good show, except for the last season and the movies.
Can I reveal something about myself to the audience? I watched that show in a really weird way, where I watched like the first 2 seasons and then just went through the rest of the show and watched all the season finales and not the other episodes.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, that show is kind of known for like the season finales.
Yeah, I had a good time doing it. I wasn't like, I didn't feel weird. I was like, I could follow this and these are enjoyable.
Yeah, good show for the most part. Anyway, so, Ernest is in band. He notices Donald checking out Maisie and talks some shit about young love, and then says, Donald's like, "What should I do? Should I go say hi to her?" And Ernest is like, "No."
He just shuts him down. I thought this scene was very funny. I don't know if they making it thought it was as funny as I did, but he's so not supportive of his friend. He's not like necessarily being outwardly mean, but he's just like, no, don't do that.
There was a moment where both of us were laughing out loud because it was just absurd. So then the principal comes in and he says something about something happening to the other band instructor. And then this new teacher, Miss Flugel's coming in to replace him. And Miss Flugel comes in, and then Ernest mimics Donald where he gets a crush on Miss Flugel.
Yeah. Yeah, he falls in love with her instantaneously. And has like a dream. They start playing Blue Danube, or I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that, but you know that one, like when Homer is floating in space and he's eating all the potato chips, that song. Mm-hmm. And he has like a dream sequence where he's in a tuxedo but he still has his hat but it's black, and they have like a dance and there's like bubbles everywhere.
Yeah, but even in like this dream sequence, Ernest is a klutz.
Yeah.
Even when Ernest, like his, and this will be a point later on, I'm sure you're going to connect to your big theory about this movie, is that even when Ernest is like doing a dream fantasy where he gets the girl, he can't help but put roses in her mouth and accidentally hit her in the face. He can't help himself but to fall and trip on the floor. You know, they just work that into Ernest having a sequence, and they like, there's like a bunch of bubbles, and they're in like these fancy clothes, and they're doing like snow angels on the floor, and flailing. And then it ends with him spinning and drop for a kiss with the teacher, and then Donald snaps him out of it, and Ernest just snaps his cymbals, and then we move on to that science class eggs erroneous scene that we talked about earlier.
I do want to mention there's one psych egg I really liked in the dream sequence where she has the rose in her mouth, like she's holding it, like you know that thing where you like rose is clenched between her teeth.
Mm-hmm. Which I honestly in real life sounds awful because roses are thorny.
Yeah, it's bad.
I would never ever want to do that in real life.
But the psych egg that I liked is Ernest dips down and comes back up, and he's clenching an entire rose bush in his mouth.
Yeah, and that's what he hits her in the face with.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. It is weird that it's in that dream sequence, but it is a pretty funny little moment.
This transitions to Ernest going to a literature class where he's about to answer a question about Mark Twain, I think, and Will Sasso sits behind him and just literally lights Ernest's hat on fire.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even like a prank, it's just like it's literally just being the worst.
Tonally, this scene is also pretty weird, because, like, Ernest's head's on fire and he doesn't notice, and he's trying to answer the question. The teacher is very concerned and distressed about Ernest's head being on fire. All of the students think it's funny. Like, what?
Yeah.
What? They're like, they're awful. That's the other thing about this movie is it does not do a good job of selling us on this school needing to be saved. Like, they just seem like there's a lot of jerks and bullies who are just sort of tolerated and never really pushed back on. And everybody hates Ernest. And it's like, I don't know. They don't really like, the school is not a great setting and they don't really make it seem like a special place. It's weird because, like, if you think about something like Community, right? Like, Community, that school is full of assholes and weirdos, but they do a really good job of making Greendale, like, endearing. You're invested in the anytime Greendale is in danger as a place, you are rooting for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, they could not do that here with this school.
Well, I mean, especially has to do with, like, the characters. Like, they barely establish any of the characters, including, like, Ernest's main friend group. And they're just not endearing at all.
Yeah, no.
So, it ends with Ernest getting a fire extinguisher thrown at him by the teacher.
No, it's by the bully. He goes and picks up the.
Is it? I
yes.
thought it was the teacher.
No, it's Rob Zombie. But yeah, he goes to pick up the fire extinguisher, and there was a part where I was like, the way he holds it, I was like, oh, I thought he was going to throw it at him, and then he just throws it at him.
Oh, yeah, it just throws at him. That ends the scene. That's like it. The scene's over.
Yeah.
Then we transition to the principal meeting with Ernest, telling Ernest about how he's not doing great, and Mr. Axel's trying to convince him to give up, and Ernest is like in despair, saying, "I'm gonna be thrown out in the cold, purged, fired, flung. Please don't throw me out." At this point in the movie, it feels like it's been
A day.
a day.
Yeah.
And Mr. Axel's trying to say, get rid of this idiot, he can't cut it. And he has one more week to show improvement, implying that it's been a week.
Yeah, the time scale is not great here. It really does not seem like it's... Because we only get a couple of classes from, so it really just seems like this is the... Not even... It doesn't even seem like it's been a day. This seems like this is like the middle of the day. And they're like, look, you had to have a day. Everybody said you suck. I just assume you're failing. We're going to get rid of you. But no, apparently it's been a week. I guess he only has one class a day. Maybe the rest of the day he's doing janitorial work that we just don't get to see. I don't know.
It's really unclear, and it doesn't make any sense. Especially if you think about how schools generally work, and you get like grades per period. Like even if he has a lot of teachers complaining about him doing stupid shit, like after a week, that doesn't justify him trying to graduate.
This is like a conversation you have at midterms.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's been a week. I mean, he seems like he passes one test at the end of this movie and gets to graduate. And also, weirdly, we don't get to see a graduation scene, which seems like the really blue ball in us there.
Yeah, again, in Rides Again, where we can't see Ernest be king, we can't have Ernest graduate. Why are we watching these movies?
Yeah, we don't get we don't get to see him have like a graduation hat that has like the bill of his. Either he's got his regular hat on and a graduation cap on top of it, or the graduation cap is like a weird hybrid baseball cap graduation cap. We don't get a scene where he tries to throw his cap, but he can't get his hat off, and he like flops on the ground trying to pull the hat off of his own head. None of that. We don't get any of that.
No, we do not. So Ernest does what feels is like very cartoony, or like maybe like old timey film thing where Ernest goes through like a blacklighted montage of the hallway as we see a montage of his failures, and he tries to convince himself he can change and that he's better, and then he's like eventually convincing himself that he can't change and he should give up, and then he eventually gives up at his locker, where he opens it and he sees Gerda in his locker.
Yeah, I guess his locker is a secret passageway into the laboratory of the scientists. Weird.
Well, here's where it gets interesting. A thing I noticed in the background as Ernest follows her through his locker to their weird science lab, they clearly cut a hole out of the wall to get to Ernest's locker specifically.
Oh, okay. That's extreme. But I respect the effort.
And Gerda and Bobby want to make Ernest an offer. They apparently created this atomic brain accelerator machine.
Mm-hmm.
Which, describe how it looks, Nate.
Well, it's like a barber chair that you sit in, and then they put a big plastic bucket over your head that's got a cutout for your face, and it's got a bunch of tubes running out of it. Well, it's got a bunch of tubes running from the front of it to the back of it, but then also out of the top of it. And then Ernest gets in it, and it's like it's like a cross between a cartoon being electrocuted and the part where they brainwash him in A Clockwork Orange.
I mean, that's a really great way to describe it. They say Ernest has been selected by them, which they refer to themselves as a blue ribbon panel, to be, as Gerda is striving for words, Bobby says, a guinea pig. And Ernest asks if this will make him smart, will he be able to pass a math test, and to quote Gerda, he'll be able to pass a moth tough.
She does say that.
She says that word for word. And I just want to note that part of this machine, there's a computer monitor, which is basically just a giant sticker of a blacked out Ernest picture and a brain overimposed over his hat area.
Yeah, his hat's in the scan. Yeah.
And then he has flashes of image, and it looks like he's just basically having a clear seizure heart attack.
He's going and there's flashes. He gets glasses for a second.
Well, one of the rare moments of concern for Ernest in this movie, because many people don't seem to give a shit about him, is Gerda says it's not working, asks Bobby to shut it down, and then Bobby shuts it down, a la Frankenstein stuff, and then Ernest comes up and has glasses and a tie and a denim vest, says something smart, then says, "You know what I mean," and then immediately goes back to normal.
Yeah. So when he is smart from the machine, he has glasses and a button-up shirt with a tie, but he still has the vest and the hat.
So Gerda explains that they need to get him up bright and early to recharge for a normal brain. This would work for 3 hours that they base on zero actual knowledge. But for an earnest brain, he gets 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. So there's a time limit on it, but like really that seems like it's supposed to be there for tension, right? Like, oh, his thing's gonna run out, he's gotta time it, but they never really do that. There's a part where he gets less time, and that creates a problem. But there's never really a thing where they establish like a ticking clock for him.
Mm-hmm. So this leads to Ernest getting all charged up the next day, exiting locker with the new smart Ernest look. I'm just going to call him Ernest. So Ernest goes to the next class with the teacher that he recently sequined and glued, and raises his hand for a question. The teacher ignores him, like doing that. Anyone really can answer the question? Anyone? And then finally gives in and picks Ernest, and Ernest says the right answer. And for some reason, both of you and I were confused by this. Mr. Axbell is in the classroom.
Yeah, again, nothing with this guy makes any sense. He's just like this malevolent force that rolls into the movie when they need something bad to happen. But, like, I think he's the worst villain we've gotten so far.
That's saying something, especially since we've talked about, the villains in general over time just not being great.
Yeah, but it's like, I'm thinking about, like, the land developer guy who's got some genuine menace. The bizarre doctor / crime lord from Rides Again, and like they were all better handled than this guy. And then Nash obviously is the gold standard, and Trantor as well. They're the sort of the gold standard of Ernest villains, but this guy he's not cut the mustard.
No, he does not at any point in time. We never see him cut mustard. So in this scene in particular, he's there to be surprised by Ernest getting it right. The teacher's like, "Oh, you got it right." And Ernest is like, "Well, of course it's right." And then he jumps up to the board and explains a complicated math problem and eventually starts teaching the class.
Yeah. So this is our first taste of, like, Ernest, and he's smart.
Correct. And just to keep up for everybody that's listening to this long, complicated movie, this is like maybe 30 minutes in to an hour and 30-minute movie.
Yeah.
So we got a lot to go.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, but like at one point I was like, this is kind of like 3 movies. It's like the beginning movie where it's like Ernest is struggling at school, and then it's like Flowers for Ernest Jernon, where now he's mad, machine makes him smart. And then later on it just becomes a sports movie.
Yeah, it becomes Ernest Rudy.
Yeah.
Except also the marching band.
Yes. We'll talk about that too. That's... the marching band thing. Like, this movie is so strange.
So, after Ernest shows off that this thing actually works, he can't wait for his new charge, and his arrogance starts to show where he rushes Gerda to get things going. He shows up late to the next class, which is the band class. Says, when Donald asks him why he's always late, he says he's bored by the preliminaries, and talks about everybody having the potential for brilliance. And then he gets bored by doing his symbols and starts to instruct the class on how to better do the song they're playing. And what song are they playing, Nate? Remind me.
It's some Sousa march.
Yeah.
What is it? It's one that's like right? It's like that one.
Yeah, exactly. So Ernest tells the students to think of soldiers, think of Thanksgiving, think of Christmas, and all this other nonsense as they play. And then does a dope trumpet solo by borrowing somebody's trumpet. Eventually says the valve might need a little oil. And then the students and the teacher beg him to be the new drum major. Then he steals somebody's clarinet, does a dope clarinet solo. And then he also, at the same time, starts tubaing Maisie's tuba, she's a tuba player apparently, and also a flute, and leads the class in that song.
Okay, I have to say something here, though. As a person who plays the clarinet, I would not, under basically any circumstances, play somebody's clarinet that they had just been playing. Because let me tell you, that thing gets wet. Like, people who are unaware, you know, a clarinet is a woodwind instrument. The wood part, I believe, refers specifically to the reed that you use to make the noise that is attached to the mouthpiece. That's a little piece of wood, and in order for it to work, you have to completely saturate it in your own saliva.
Inserting classic Ernest catchphrase. Ew.
Yeah, no, they're gross. They get gross. There's a valve in them specifically. I mean, trumpets have this too, a spit valve. But yeah, your spittle gets all up in them. You have to clean a clarinet. You get like a little rag that's on a string, and you drag it through the clarinet all the way to wipe out all of your gross spit that has like condensed inside of this tube. I was extremely grossed out by that part where he just picks up a teen, so imagine how grody it is, a teen's clarinet, and puts his mouth right on it.
Yeah. You know, especially in the modern time and day where we're recording this podcast during a pandemic.
Oh yeah, yeah, that too.
Like, I'm just cringing from your descriptions alone.
Yeah, I didn't think about it, but I really hope nobody's been practicing like an orchestra with woodwinds during the pandemic, because that seems like a real disease factory.
So this kind of leads into the major remainder plot point of this movie, where Ernest is the marching band drum major. He takes them outside and he leads the band in marching.
He's also a conductor. At one point, they stop marching and they're just like standing on the field playing a regular high school band performance, and he's conducting them. So he's got a real amorphous role in this band. Yeah.
He tells the band that the school's embarrassed by them, but they should be playing proud despite that. The jocks try to throw him off by throwing a football at him, but he's Ernest, and Ernest catches that football and throws it right back and knocks out Rob Zombie.
Yeah, because for some reason being smart also makes you... I guess it heightens his reflexes?
Hand-eye coordination?
Yeah, I guess.
I have no idea. I mean, this machine...
But it makes him wear glasses.
Yeah, this machine is bonkers.
Yeah, no, yes. As is everything in this movie. But yeah, now Ernest is in charge of the marching band.
And it cuts to them going to lunch. We see a short bit where Mr. Axel and the principal are talking about closing the school. The principal's trying to convince Mr. Axel otherwise because they have a football team that wins all the time, and now the marching band's good. But Axel's like, I don't know about that, and then they leave off. And then Ernest is in line for lunch with Rodney, the DJ, and Donald. And Ernest is asking them if they want to join him to an arcade later in the day so he can show off his hand-eye coordination skills.
Okay. I totally did not even... That did not even register with me.
Yeah, it's weird. Being smart means you're real good at the arcade, I guess. So...
Can I just say, rewinding a little bit, that one of the least believable things about this movie is that the success of the marching band would at all factor into the school's funding. No one cares about the marching band.
100%. Like, the football team is what they care about.
Yeah.
So the kids are, like, ignoring Ernest, and they, like, don't want to hang out with him. It's not really revealed why until Ernest talks to the cafeteria dude and asks him if he has any better food, like a sandwich with cilantro, and the cafeteria food offers ketchup, and Ernest makes, like, a disgusted face, and then the two kids call him out for being an arrogant jerk. And how they need to study, unlike Ernest, who can just do whatever he wants.
They're having meatloaf, and the things that he asks for to modify the meatloaf are béarnaise sauce, fresh cilantro, or pico de gallo.
Because being smart makes you like cilantro.
Apparently.
Yeah, so this scene is just... It feels like there was not enough build-up to the scene of Ernest being an arrogant jerk who doesn't study.
Yeah, also, it raises this question... because when he shows up, as you said, when he's late to band class, also weird that that's a class and not an extracurricular activity. But I don't know, maybe it works different in other schools. He does that, he says an excuse, right? He says like, oh, I'm tired of the preliminaries. So he's specifically hiding the usage of the machine from his teen friends. So what do they think is happening?
Like, Ernest, like, teen wolfed himself. He transformed into Ernest overnight, and no one seems to pay any mind to that. It's just like, oh, this guy that we know is usually a clumsy idiot is now super smart and arrogant. And also, we know somehow that he never studies.
Yeah, and this becomes more confusing later.
So this leads to more of the arrogant Ernest, as we cut to Gerda and Bobby with the machine. Gerda's talking about how she wants to try on the real brain, but Ernest will do. And then Ernest shows up, and he's a dick to Gerda as he tries to get her to hurry up and recharge him. Specifically, on a tight schedule. Could you be ready when I get here? This leads to Bobby not charging Ernest enough, so he's only going to be smart for another 38 minutes. And Gerda's like, why would you do that, Bobby? Oh, Bobby, you devil.
Yeah. So, this is the one time where it's weird, because they set up the time limit, and then the one time it matters is when the time limit is deliberately shortened, rather than the one that had previously been established.
Mm-hmm. Which is literally, like, they said, like, 45 minutes to an hour for the first one, and this one's just 38 minutes, so it's, like, really not that much different.
No, it's really not.
This cuts to Ernest go to a history class that we've never seen him go to before with this African-American teacher. And it transitions to her talking about history to her just blah, blah, blahing, like literally.
Mm.
As Ernest is like getting upset because he apparently knows all this stuff already. And then it finally like gets time for Ernest to give his history report on Seward's Folly. And he talks in like this deep vibrato as Ernest, the smart Ernest. But then starts to switch back to the like grating Ernest voice, and then has a and I know you think I've done that for longer than necessary for the joke because it's like, you know, too much, but that's what the movie does, where he's literally just having a stroke for a full-on 5 minutes as everybody laughs, and he starts to, like, walk out the door.
It goes on forever. It's also not just that he starts speaking in gibberish. He also starts, like, moving weird and does, like, a weird crouchy duck walk. And they just think it's hilarious. I guess they think he's doing a bit. I have no idea. Or they're just totally heartless.
He just, like... if that happened in front of me, regardless of whether or not he had glasses and they magically disappeared during this whole stroke, I would be...
I guess it does happen.
I would be so... Like, I would not be laughing. I would be concerned. I'd be like... You know, I'm actually trained in first aid CPR. I'd be, like, freaking out.
Yeah, it's, like, upsetting. It's also, like... It's fine if people laugh at it, because it is supposed to be funny. It's weird that his friends don't, like, rush to his aid or anything. I guess he's alienated them. But the thing is, like, at other points in this movie, the smart juice runs out, and he doesn't do this. But then also, at another point in the movie, the smart juice runs out, and he does do this. It's very inconsistent about when and why this happens to him.
Yeah. It really is. And it's also, cutting back to Goes to Camp, it's a good thing there's no family of badgers nearby, because otherwise they would have freaked out and destroyed him.
Yes, this is true.
So, as Ernest is stroking his way back to the brain atomizer, and Gerda and Bobby also make fun of him stroking. They put him back in the machine
They do.
And give him more juice. And then he goes to teach marching band, and he has the full... this is a powerful costume. Nate, do you want to talk about this powerful costume?
Yes. So he's got... His traditional Ernest hat has been replaced with a beret. He's wearing glasses because he's smart. He has like a maroon cape that has a tall collar, not a Dracula collar, but like it goes over his whole neck, kind of like a turtleneck or like a mandarin collar, as one might call it. And then I am pretty sure, is wearing a blue unitard or leotard, but then he's also wearing pants over that, which leads me to believe that this scene was originally supposed to have him fully in a leotard, and then they were like, oh no, this movie is for and stars kids. We need to put some pants on Jim.
Because Jim probably got that bulge.
Yeah. More like Ernest P. Worrell. Am I right?
I don't know. They made the labyrinth for kids, and everybody was happy about that.
Yeah, but Ernest is he's no Goblin King.
That's true. He's not as sexy as David Bowie.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
He's not the only one that's dressed weirdly in the scene. Maisie's doing her tuba stuff, and she's wearing this really classy velour hat.
Yeah, she has like an Ernest hat, but it's velour, and pink, which is cool. Cool hat.
Ernest walks around the band clapping, doing stuff. He cartwheels to the principal to show off Ernest. The principal's happy. They wish him good luck. And then we eventually have the scene end, and we never see Ernest in this costume again throughout this entire movie, which is baffling.
Yeah, this is not the outfit he wears to lead the band, which leads me to believe that this was some kind of specifically for practice. That was like his workout cape that he had on. I mean, that's the only conclusion I can reach.
Yeah. At a certain point, I think during the handstands, Miss Flugel walks up to Ernest and asks him to chaperone with her for the school dances coming up, because apparently she's wooed by him doing all this stuff. And he says yes. And then that's just a thing. We will never see this dance occur.
Yeah, no, another thing where they set it up and they don't pay it off. But yeah, I don't know, gets asked out on a date, so that's cool. Good for Ernest.
So we cut to the big football game thing where Ernest is a full marching band outfit, and he gets ready to go, but then he realizes he needs another charge, and then he runs off. His big thing for the marching band is if shit happens, if you lose your head, if you get confused, don't worry, just watch me. But then he needs to make sure that he's smart enough and is Ernest, so he runs off to go be Ernest. And then we cut to Gerda sobbing over a machine that's broken somehow. Describe the scene for us, Nate.
I mean, it's clearly supposed to be like a big crisis, all is lost type moment. Except, I don't know who smashed the machine. They fix it very easily later on. But it is, played like a character died. But it's just someone got into their lab and smashed up the big brain zapper machine. And now Ernest can't be smart anymore.
We never find out who did it. It's just, never brought up again. They just fix it later on. And the entire time she's sobbing about it, she's blaming just random people, Philistines, Republicans, what have you.
It's the most political in Ernest movie.
And it's just, again, it's one of those things that they just never follow up on, and it's confusing.
Yes.
It would have worked if it was still the Pick Nemesis thing, where or Mr. Axwell came in and destroyed the machine, figuring things out.
Yeah, there's no moment where someone sees him being smart and it's I gotta get to the bottom of this. No, there's none of that. There's just that all of a sudden the machine is broken, so he can't use the machine anymore, and he has to learn how to study normal like a regular person. Which again is even more confusing because his teen friends do help him with that. And again, it is very unclear what they think has been going on.
Yeah. It's again the similar thing like the Eggs Erroneous, where it's these two characters just going off doing random invention stuff that no one really pays attention to except for Ernest.
Yeah.
So Ernest has a freak out. What am I going to do? I can't go out there. I'm just me. He joins the field, but he doesn't have his marching band hat. He has his regular hat. But he's still in the marching band uniform.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to tell Donald not to do that, but Donald says to go on, watch him, and he has to climb up to a scary height on a cherry picker. Would that be accurate, Nate?
It's like a scissor lift.
Yeah. And he does the thing anyway. He starts improvising, and it starts to work well. Where he starts leading the band, and they do the song. But then Rodney opens up a banner, and Ernest gets caught on the banner and is lifted up, and his legs start flailing, and the band starts to flail with him.
Yeah, they're following all of his movements, and so he's bumbling around, and they start bumbling around. They're bumping into each other, and they flop down on the floor, and they're wiggling all around. It's all right.
Then he
could be funnier.
Gets loose and falls directly into Maisie's tuba. A lot of people laugh, and a lot of people are upset that he stumbles around with a tuba on his head, actually setting off some nearby fireworks, which fly off into some Disney princess float that's nearby, some hot dog cart nearby, some popcorn vendor, and everything gets set fire, and Ernest is just fumbling around the floor while all this is happening and everybody's having this giant freak out.
Yeah, and then he eventually gets his head free, and then he sees the destruction he hath wrought, and sadly tries to crawl back into the tuba.
Yeah, which that part works, but everything else
funny.
before it is not as funny as it should be.
I agree. It seems like Ernest with his head stuck in a tuba should be a no-brainer, should be a slam dunk, should be a home run. All the other things I've said over and over again throughout this episode, but it's like, it's fine. The high point of it is just that end part where he tries to crawl back in.
Mm-hmm.
What we were saying when we were watching it was like, I'll say this now. One of my biggest problem with this movie is it kind of runs, though so much of the movie hinges on Ernest being unconfident, which kind of runs counter to what his character's all about. And like, we'll get into it when we get to our list of essentials. And I feel like that's really on evidence in this scene where when you think about what if Ernest got his this podcast is so fucking weird. When you think about Ernest with a trombone or a tuba on his head, you imagine him like he gets that and then he won't acknowledge that he has a tuba on his head and keeps trying to confidently direct the band while he's got a tuba on his head and he can't see anything. And, that's where the humor comes from, is the fact that he's too proud to address the fact that he has a tuba on his head. But in this one, he gets the tuba on it. He's like already shaken, and then he gets the tuba on his head and remains shaken. And it's just not as impactful as it could have been had he tried to power through having a tuba on his head, which is a phrase I've said so many times that it just sounds like noise to me now.
Well, I want to say two things to that. First and foremost, this podcast is reflective of the Ernest movie that we watched, and the Ernest movie we watched was insanely weird, so it's fair. Secondly, I make jokes, and I mispronounce things as just like a bit that I do. Earlier in this podcast, I said Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam was Dr. Otto, Gloom Beam, something. But when I was talking about this scene in particular, and I said Disney Princess Float, I meant it. Because we literally have like these three women dressed up in like these Disney princess outfits on a float just randomly in the middle of a football field for seemingly no reason that's never addressed, understood, or outlined. And that also gets set on fire. But it's like, what is this? What is happening? What are we looking at?
Oh, yeah. This is also baffling because like, I saw it initially and I was like, well, it's like Homecoming, right? It's a homecoming float, and that's the homecoming queen. But there's three of them, so it can't be the homecoming queen. So what is it? I don't know. They're like in pageant outfits, but they're on this float. So I don't know what's going on there.
No, it's insanely baffling.
Yeah.
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with the confidence thing, but we'll definitely get into that more with essentials and the other faults of this movie. Which, again, reflects us talking about it crazily on this podcast because it's a crazy movie.
Yeah.
So this transitions to Ernest, after he's sobbing in his tuba, walks up to Mrs. Flugel's class, and she ignores him, but he apologizes to her, and she's, like, pretending to grade papers, saying, hey, sorry, he's me. Or, sorry, I'm me. Sorry, he's me. That's really funny. Then he sadly walks out, and she, like, looks through the camera wistful, like she still has feelings for Ernest despite all that, I guess. Again, a relationship that's not really fleshed out.
No, and there isn't really a payoff as far as I can remember.
There's a slight payoff.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't get, like, married.
No, they do not get, like, married.
And he doesn't, like, lift, like, you feel like Ernest should, like, lift her up and, like, kiss her and do, like, a Humphrey Bogart impression or something. But that doesn't really happen either.
Well, there, little lady. Nope. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just say I had another idea about this movie, a better version of this movie?
Please.
While we were just talking. When you said I'm sorry, he's me. What if they had okay, imagine a version of this movie where they do the smart brain zap machine way earlier, and then smart, mean Ernest becomes its own persona, and then the movie is more about Ernest learning that he doesn't need the machine and the magic to do math was in him all along. And then smart Ernest gets scared that he's going to go away forever if Ernest stops using the machine. And he builds a machine that separates him out. And then the final villain of the movie is another doppelganger of Ernest, a la Nash. But one born from within Ernest's own psyche.
It's Ernest. Oh man, that'd be
exactly.
so good.
Also, I think I just pitched Ernest Goes to Double Ernest again.
yeah, but this version I think is better.
Yeah, though this one's better. Because it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it's also kind of like the Urkel and Stefan Urkel thing.
Dr. Ernest and Mr. Ernest?
No, it would be Dr. Ernest and Mr. Worrell.
Yeah. Yo, that is amazing. I would watch the crap out of that movie.
Well, everybody tune into the final episode and we might work out how exactly that movie would work.
Oh, man. Okay. So, Ernest is at his low point. He goes to...
Oh, wait. Hold on.
Holding on.
Josh, hold on. I just realized how the climax of the movie would have to work, right? Ernest defeats Ernest. And so Ernest steals the splitter machine, and all of his personas come out and help him. Like Aunt Nelda and the Lumberjack, and like there's a legion of Ernests.
You're pitching Ernest Legion?
Well, yeah, I guess that's what I'm pitching. It's like Ernest Multiplicity. But then and then it's like evil Ernest has to fight like an army of the good Ernests.
That's amazing. I love that.
Or it's like, he does like the John Wayne impression, right? Like there's that like sort of heroic, like, I'm Ernest, but I'm a hero persona. And it's like, what if we got him out and he could fight the smart Ernest? But then they can't do it immediately. And while they're trying to find that Ernest within Ernest, they accidentally unleash all the other Ernests.
Yeah, they get like Aunt Nelda comes out.
Yeah. And they keep like zapping him with the machine and a new Ernest persona keeps coming out each time.
That would actually, like, tying this back into another thing that never paid off in this movie with the cowboy, that could have just been, like, Ernest talking to Cowboy Ernest as, like, guiding him, like, you know the way, Ernest. Of course you do. It's in that brain of yours. And then they pay that off by trying to get Cowboy Ernest back out, because Cowboy Ernest is the one that could defeat Ernest.
You know what I just realized, though, in this conversation? This is the... Wait. Yeah, well, I can't remember. Besides possibly Ghost of Camp, which I can't really remember. This is the first one without Aunt Nelda, right?
Correct.
Huh.
Yeah, I was going to get into that later, but there's
Weird.
no Ernest disguises in this movie.
He does wear outfits, though, but you're right. There's no disguises.
No, he's always Ernest or Ernest.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Where were we? Ernest goes to his special Ernest janitor closet, which we've never seen before, where he says goodbye to his inanimate objects and his tools, saying he let the whole school down. He does this classic Ernest bit where he uses pliers, I think, to like speak back to him, like he did with the baby doll in Scared Stupid.
Yeah, it's also he does it with Pokey in Ghost of Camp.
Pokey eventually speaks in that movie, so that's weird. Anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, weird podcast, weird movies. The Pliers speak back to him in the Ernest voice, but then the kids, Maisie, Donald, and Rodney, are in the background and start voicing the Pliers for Ernest, and Ernest doesn't realize for like a little bit, where it's like, you let the whole school down, and the students take over, and they're like, yeah, you need to apologize to all your friends, and now you have to study like everybody else. And then Ernest eventually realizes it's them, and then they have a weird montage that we'll get into in a second. But I want to use this moment because this is the first moment that we see Donald, Maisie, and Rodney together as a group without any setup whatsoever.
Yeah, the movie's just like, they're friends, and they're friends with Ernest. And it's like, they are? They are? Okay.
Yeah, also, like, the first thing that we had set up was Donald couldn't even talk to Maisie. Like, he never even said hello to her before. And now all of a sudden they're like pals that they've been friends for forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they set up him having a crush on her, and guess what? There isn't a payoff. It doesn't matter. Why did they do that? What happened with this movie? Why is it like this? Did they just like, when they were every day to film it, at the end of it, they just got like blackout drunk or something and forgot everything they filmed the day before? Is it just heavily edited? Like, nothing in this movie lines up except for a couple inexplicable things which line up very tightly. I don't understand this film.
See, the thing is, Nate, and what we're probably never going to find out, is this film had a lot of things on the cutting room floor. So Coke Sam's is eventually going to come out with Coke Sam's Cut, of Ernest Goes to School. He's gonna unite the seven. He's gonna have his like 4-hour long theatrical cut where they put in the Joker. It's gonna be great.
Well, they put in the Jared Leto Joker specifically, obviously.
Obviously, duh. But yeah, there's like so much that just doesn't make any sense. That has never paid off, and it's crazy. And the Maisie thing is one of it. So she's just a part of the group. So is Rodney, I guess. And they offer to help out Ernest, and they do this montage, which seems like it's going on for days at a time because the background scheme is like the lights off, the lights are on, the lights are off, the lights are on, and they're constantly like talking to Ernest about random stuff, featuring fabulous quotes such as "What guy? Elements. What about the penguin? Helium agriculture."
Yeah, it's amazing. They like write them a couple of real questions, like to ask him in the beginning of the montage, and then by the end, they're just yelling elements at him.
What guy?
Which country?
No, even that's more specific than what guy.
What guy is the funniest? Because that's like the third question they ask him. They ask him like 2 real questions, and then Rodney just yells "what guy" at him, which is the funniest Rodney is throughout the entire movie.
And the montage is like so quick. Like it's like quick, like flip book page turn where it's just like light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And it feels like insane.
Should have had a gag where he cut to the other side of the room and there was a 4th character there who was just flipping the light switch on and off really fast.
That's the pig. It's the pig should have been doing that.
It should have been the pig.
The pig should have been inexplicably part of this group of students.
Ernest could have had a pet pig. Like, I mean, he had the dog, but I could easily see him having a pig. Because he's supposed to be like a redneck.
Oh, for sure. The pig would have been a great... Like, we've talked about the pig being the nemesis, which I think is really funny, but easily could have been his rim shot for this movie.
Yeah. I mean, Rimshot is almost, he's kind of a, he's a little bit of a nemesis in a way. He causes problems.
Yeah, but he's like the Ernest of dogs.
Yeah, and we could have gotten the Ernest of pigs, but we didn't get it.
No. So this culminates in Ernest falling asleep at his desk, but he's waken up by DJ Rodney, and over like the announcements, not like in person. And then he gets to his locker and tells Donald that his brain hurts, and maybe mankind is not supposed to have all this knowledge after just studying. Like, the entire movie, he's had his brain charged full of knowledge, but now, when he's put in the effort, mankind wasn't supposed to have all this knowledge. So inconsistent. And then he opens his locker and sees a squished up Gerda saying that they fixed the machine overnight and offers Ernest a charge, and he turns it down and slams the locker on Gerda as she screams that we need you. What about our Nobel Prize?
Yeah.
What about our Nobel Prize?
Yeah, so this is like this. Remember this, dear listener. Remember this moment that is clearly supposed to be the culmination of a character arc for Ernest, where he rejects the usage of this machine to artificially enhance his intelligence and abilities. Remember this, because the people making the movie did not. They didn't.
Yeah, also, again, we're at the hour mark of this movie.
Yes.
There is a half an hour left of movie after Ernest has gone through this arc.
I remember distinctly us checking to see how much time was left in the movie at around this point and being like, how?
Well, we shall explain how in excruciating detail for the next hour of this podcast.
We're going to explain it, and you, the audience, are still going to be like, how? How is that a half hour? How did that happen? They're lying about how long this movie is. We are already talking about the movie longer than it was by a significant margin,
and we're not even doing it justice.
All right,
let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
Let's get through this.
We gotta get through this. I can't believe this is already longer than the Scared Stupid episode.
It's longer than Scared Stupid. It's longer than Rides Again. It's oh man. Okay.
We did 2 episodes with a third guy on the podcast, and neither of them were as long as this fucking episode.
But we got to do it, Nate. We got to do it for our listeners. They need to know.
It's going to be really funny when we record a whole episode where we come up with an entire movie plot, and it's shorter than this. All right.
Well, we'll pay that off. But let's get to this next scene, which I think Nate, you specifically enjoyed this scene, where Ernest takes a test to what can only be described as music from the Zelda game Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. Okay. This scene has there's a lot of Ernest slapstick that's funny and some weird reality bending stuff. But yeah, it starts and it's this like ominous music, and I immediately was like, this sounds like Zelda music. And the more it goes, the more it just sounds like music from Ocarina of Time. You brought up like the water temple. It kind of sounds like that, or it kind of sounds like when you're like. Yeah, like stuff that they play when you're like underground or something. I was like, I'm just waiting for him to have to like shoot an arrow into an eyeball on the wall to get out of this classroom. And the rest of the music in this movie does not sound like this. All of a sudden, it becomes this sort of strange atmospheric soundtrack. Yeah, Ernest gets this standardized test, and it's like it's closed with a little rubber band thing. And everyone else just immediately breaks it with their pencil. And then Ernest spends a really long time stretching it out and getting all earnesty with it. He sees the...
Hold on. Pause here. Let's just turn to our audience now. And we're going to pause for a second so you can guess what is one of the first things that Ernest does to try to open this. Did you guess use his mouth? If so, correct. He bites on it, and that also doesn't work.
Yeah. I don't even remember, how does he solve the problem?
He takes a giant lug nut wrench out of Hammer's face.
Oh, true, he does do that.
Again, like one of the more cartoony aspects of Ernest, like we talked about how Ernest was cartoony in Rides Again. In this movie, he takes that cartoony notch up to the extreme.
Yeah. But yeah, so he briefly sees the proctor of the exam as like a Nazi. And then at the end of the test, he sees her kind of like as a monster because she like shoots her tongue out of her mouth like a lizard to eat a fly.
Yeah, so the next problem that Ernest faces while taking this test, because this would only happen to Ernest, is once he gets his test open, a fly just comes up and bothers him. And this fly like continually is all over him. He's trying to get it. At one point, it gets in his face, and he hits the test on his face to get it, and then the teacher's like, "Is there a problem, Mr. Worrell?" And suddenly she's in like a Nazi uniform, and then he says like, "No," and then again he's trying to get the fly, and then later the teacher just demon tongue eats the fly, and that's never explained.
Yeah, because again it's like, okay, so the part where she's a Nazi, it feels pretty clear like that's in Ernest's mind. He's seeing her like that because she's intimidating and he's scared about the test. She eats the fly at the end, and that's the resolution of the fly. So it's like, what actually happened? Did she just swat it?
It's also the resolution of the scene. Like, that resolves the scene. That is the cutaway to the next scene.
Yeah, and we don't find out Ernest's test results until the very end of the movie, where they're just kind of mentioned by character. They go like, "Oh, you passed a big test, Ernest."
Yeah, the test that determines whether or not you graduate in that one class that you took the test.
Because all of a sudden, like, the movie forgets that it's about Ernest passing high school, and like I said, it just becomes a sports movie at the end of the movie. And then they're like, "Oh, yeah, you passed the test or whatever."
Yeah, so this is the sports movie section. Cue sports noises.
Did you say noisoids?
Yep. I'm getting loopy. This movie's driving me insane.
Okay, it just sounds like they sound like fun aliens or robots or something.
So it cuts to Ernest after the teacher eats the fly. It cuts to him at marching band area, and he accidentally, as he's like doing stuff,
I just remembered what happens at the marching band.
Yeah, wait for it.
Okay.
He's at the marching band. He's doing something, and Rodney's like in this nearby shed, and for some reason he like I don't even remember what happens in the scene, but for some reason he like slams the shed door shut and knocks Rodney out and locks him in the shed. And then Ernest leaves.
It's like a big rolling equipment case for the band.
Oh, okay.
It's weird because it's for the marching band, but it's like the thing that you would put like amps in for like a concert.
Yeah. That makes sense. And Ernest leaves, and then Mr. Axwell shows up and stops Coach Decker, not the wrestler coach, the other coach that made Ernest go in with the wrestler coach.
Yes.
And convinces Coach Decker to, even though Coach Decker is assured that they're going to win, convinces Coach Decker that once the schools merge, he'll be the head coach at the merged school. This is the only time that we find out that he plans to merge the schools, by the way. there's no other school that we ever talk about or know that's getting merged. But this is when it is brought up, and says that he'll guarantee the coach that head job when they merge the schools if the coach throws the football game that's about to happen. So they have an excuse to shut down the school because the school's football team loses a single round.
I guess it's just I don't think it's necessarily that if they lose. And this is me making excuses for the movie, but I don't think it's necessarily that if they lose, then they will get defunded. It's just that if they win and they're champions, it'll be harder to defund them, I guess.
Yeah, so they shake hands. The coach is unhappy about it, but agrees. And Rodney overhears everything.
Do you think the stakes of this movie are lost on us because we went to school in a district that only had one high school?
No. I mean, I will admit that we probably don't have the same experience of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, this movie just sets us up awfully.
No, I mean, it does, for sure. But, do people care about their high school this way? I don't know. I mean, I had this experience to a certain extent, not in high school, but in middle school. After my 7th grade, they shut down the middle school I was going to and merged it with the other schools. And it was not that big a deal. I didn't really care. But do people care?
I don't know. There's lots of movies about school spirit, but I never had any.
Yeah, I mean, our school was not the best. The same thing. It's it's always weird to me with high school football. I can get invested in the stakes of high school football thing in fiction because it's the same as getting invested in the stakes of any sports movie. But it was I thought about this recently and I was I don't think I ever knew who was even on our football team.
Same.
I was it existed. It definitely existed, and they had games. But it was there was no person in our school where I thought of them as a football player.
Yeah. They were clearly popular kids, but there was the football jock or the head cheerleader or the captain of the chess club. There's classic stereotypes from that a Bowling for Soup song.
The clearest clique like that we had in our school was just the drama kids. Those were the ones you could identify.
Yes, you could definitely identify me as a drama kid.
Mm-hmm. Were you a drama kid?
Yeah.
Well, shit, maybe I just don't remember any of high school. Maybe the problem is just that I have a bad memory.
Anyway, I don't know. I think it's the movie. I think maybe our experience is super different, but also just movies in general have high school on a different playing field.
Yeah, high school is weird in movies. That's true.
And this movie in particular just tries to emulate that, but does it very poorly.
Yeah. So, are we getting into the marching band performance now?
We're getting there. We have just a little bit to go. So I know it's you'll see how crazy it is, listeners. I promise the wait will be worth it. So the coach coaches badly on purpose. The football team is a losing montage, and then they get to halftime. There's this announcer who's not Rodney, who is this adult guy who's just doing the announcements that we've never seen before. Says that there's 30 minutes of this massacre to go. At this point, we cut to the muskrat mascot, which we haven't seen before, walk up to the shed storage container and hear Rodney yelling out for help and lets him out. And Rodney's like, "I owe you one, pal. I love this guy." And I feel like there was the point, or maybe a point in the script where the mascot takes off its head at the end of the movie and it's Coke Sam's or whatever. But that was never done.
Again, the mascot could have just been the cow. They could have gotten rid of the cowboy ghost and had it be the mascot. And then they could have had a bit where it's the mascot is a silent protector of the school, which would have been funny.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. That's the only time the mascot, you see it before, in the opening and stuff like that. But this is the only point where the mascot is important in any way.
So Rodney grabs Maisie and tells her all about what's going to happen. And then Maisie and Rodney go to Gerda for help, and they do the classic movie thing
You're making this movie sound more coherent than it is, because I don't believe they go to them for help. They just all of a sudden are being helped by Gerda.
You know what? You're right. I'm retroactively in my brain trying to make this movie make sense.
They just like all of a sudden they're at the locker room for the football team, and like Gerda and Bobby are there with like sleeping gas to help them with their
Oh
totally
no, you're
bonkers
missing.
plot.
No, I'm right. You're missing a scene.
Oh,
Because
what
this
am I?
sets up something later. They go to Gerda for help, and they talk all quiet, like the classic movie thing of like, here's what we're gonna do, and then we don't actually say what we're gonna do, so it helps the movie out.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize to the movie. I'm sorry, Coke Sam's.
And then it cuts to them going with Gerda and Bobby to put sleeping gas into the locker room of the football players and knock them all out and replace them with people who don't play football, replace them with the marching band.
Okay, so two things I want to say. One, it's still like okay, even if they do have that scene, it's still nonsense because like those characters have not interacted with each other at any point. It's like okay, now they're friends, and Gerda and Bobby are willing to help the teens who are all inexplicably friends with Ernest. That's like it's still like mushy. The other thing is, this is maybe one of the most like not baffling, but just one of the most like I'm not even sure what the word I'm looking for is, but like I guess just one of the funniest choices, but that the movie makes, because it's like clearly at some point they decided they wanted to have the big football game where Ernest wins the championship be the finale of the movie, be the big climax. But then they wrote the movie and realized it was mostly about the marching band. So the way they cut the Gordian knot on this one is they just have the marching band become the football team for the last act of the movie. It's wild. Like, it's one of the biggest galaxy brain screenwriting choices I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's literally insane. Because it doesn't seem to make any goddamn sense. Ever. At any point. At all.
Well, this point now that, like, from this point of the movie onward, it's just, like, in another dimension. It just goes... it goes so far off the rails that it's, like, it's crashed into the ocean and is swimming in the Marianas Trench. There are no rails to be seen. We're in a dimension without rails by the end of this movie.
So the setup for this is that while Maisie and Rodney and Gerda and Bobby are doing this and getting some of the marching band to replace the football players, for some reason, Ernest is doing a halftime show with the marching band where they're doing all this like really like practice dances and stuff to distract everybody. So I guess it's like half of the marching band is replacing the football jocks, and the other half is doing the funky muskrat cat.
Okay, so they start playing like a funk beat. Not a good one, by the way, but a funk beat. And then the announcer starts rapping for them? Like a clearly...
Homeboy moving down the street got his homies moving to a funky muskrat beat. What?
Yeah, he references James Brown deliberately at one point. But they wrote a rap for him, or is he freestyling? It is like we were like wheezing during this scene. It destroyed us. Like the funk music starts and Ernest is like very awkwardly dancing in a very white guy sort of way, and then when the announcer starts rapping, it was like all of my bones shot out of my body like Sonic losing his rings. Like I just couldn't process it.
We were both the head Nazi from Indiana Jones in the Ark of the Covenant, where we just like our faces just melted.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it was like that's the start of this like act of the movie. And they spend a really long time doing weird marching band performances. They do a thing where they all get in a ring in the center of the field and like lean on each other and do like the wave in a circle while they're playing their instruments.
It's called the Spiral Life.
It is called that, yes.
And there's two other ones that I want to point out. First one is horns in space. As they just throw woodwind instruments to the cheerleaders.
Well, to be clear, those are brass instruments, but yeah, they throw their instruments high into the sky, and then people catch them and start playing them, and it's another instance of them sharing instruments, which is gross.
Yeah. Kids, don't share instruments.
Let me just tell you. Let me tell you another lesson from being in band. One of the grossest smells in the world is the mouthpiece of a brass instrument. It is grody. So don't like that. Like, it's slightly less gross to me than sharing a woodwind instrument because you don't have to like completely soak the inside of your trumpet mouthpiece to get it to work. Still pretty gross.
Yeah. Ew. Ew. This culminates in what is called the saber dance, as Ernest does a Muppets routine where he goes along the line of people playing instruments and uses them to play their own instruments by hitting them with like mallets. And it's basically like,
yeah.
I think the song they're doing, it sounded like Flight of the Bumblebee to me.
I think the song might be called Saber Dance. I don't actually know, but it's like I can't do it. But you know, it's like it's fast. And he's like running up and down.
Yeah. It's very Muppetsy. And then now the marching band is the football team. And Ernest goes out to lead them. And he's in uniform. He's in like a football jersey. And he has a leather helmet over his hat.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good look.
Yeah. Again, like, this movie has no disguises, but it's got some solid costume changes for our boy Ernest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we get a long-ass comedy football sequence.
Well, hold on. So this pays off a small bit, where Ernest says he's going to show everybody why he's called Crazy Legs Worrell, paying off a really teeny bit from the movie earlier.
Yeah, well, literally one line from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, this is the thing they care about paying off. And then he says, "Give me the ball and watch the show." And then he literally just gets tackled repeatedly as he catches the ball.
It's pretty funny. He gets he is completely owned over and over again.
And then this transitions to a montage of him just like playing awfully and getting tackled, where he's commented on as playing like a disgrace. And then there's another Muppet scene in between this, where literally Ernest is hammered into the ground by sledgehammers by two other people on the other team.
Yeah, they have like big cartoon circus mallets, and they're just hammering him into the ground like he's a steak. And then like they just cut away, and that is not acknowledged ever again.
It's in between like the football stuff. It's just weird. It reminded me a lot of like did you see Jonah Hex?
Yes, I saw Jonah Hex.
It reminded me of Jonah Hex, where it's like they're doing that main fight thing with him and
John
Malkovich, where like in between the fight, there's also this dream sequence of them having a fight.
Yeah, that movie's weird.
Yeah, that movie's very weird. But like, it reminded me of like, it's like a symbolic thing of like, you know, this is him getting defeated. Of course, he's getting hammered into the ground by the players, but also they're showing him getting hammered into the ground, and it just doesn't do what I think they wanted it to do.
I mean, it gets back to the thing that's constant in this movie, where it's like unclear what parts are supposed to be imaginary and what parts are supposed to be real.
Yeah.
I do want to say about Jonah Hex. Yeah, I was really excited for that movie because it was directed by the guys who did Crank and Crank 2. Jonah Hex is a cool character. I was very into Josh Brolin at the time. So like that was like post No Country for Old Men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was super into that movie, and I really liked him in that movie. And then Mastodon was going to do the score, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, this is going to be a perfect movie. And then I saw it, and I was like, this is not a perfect movie, or even a particularly good one. It's kind of super boring.
No, that movie sucked. I like pretty much fell asleep to it.
Yeah.
In theaters. I haven't done that to like many movies, but that happened.
But, you know, Lance Reddick probably got a big paycheck, and that's always nice to see.
Here's out to my boy Lance Reddick. Love you, man. So yeah, that's just like what I was thinking about, because it's like it tries to do the same thing where it's like a symbolic gesture that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this transitions to Gerda showing up, and she's like, "I fixed it," and offers to accelerate Ernest's brain so he plays football better. You know, what do you think Ernest would do, dear listeners, when he's given this option that he turned down recently, had this whole character arc to get accelerated. What do you think he would do?
Remember what I told you to remember, which is the part where he turns down using the machine because he learned that he doesn't need it. So logically, in this sequence, which, clearly it's supposed to be a thing where he's getting another final test, another temptation. He's a real hero's journey type moment. So what does he do?
If you guessed he's just okay with it, you're right.
Yep, they just uses the machine. Do they acknowledge that he learned not to use the machine earlier? No, not at all. Is there at any point where it seems like there's a downside to using the machine? No, not at all. Does using it make him arrogant and mean like it did before? Maybe she does say that she improved it. So are we supposed to assume the improvement is that the machine doesn't make you a jerk anymore?
Honestly, who knows?
This is another one of the most baffling writing choices I've ever seen in a movie.
I mean, it does culminate in something that is enjoyable, like just visual treat, where Ernest rips off his football jersey to reveal his hat and vest. And that's how he's going to play now.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize okay, that's amazing. We'll talk about that in a second, because that is one of my favorite visuals in the movie. But I really want to emphasize that, this is it. He just uses it, and it's fine, and it helps them. It's it's not a thing where it's supposed to be tragic. It's not a thing where it's well, I guess sometimes you got to compromise. It doesn't come to bite him in the ass. There's no consequence. He has a whole movie about how he shouldn't use the machine, and then he just uses the machine at the end. I'm trying to think of an example of what this would be like if it happened in another movie. I don't know. I mean, I guess it is literally like any movie where the character learns that the magic was in them all along. If at the end they were just but also the magic's kind of a little bit outside me too.
Just fails to learn the lesson.
Yeah. But yeah, so he gets supercharged, and then he tears off his jersey, but also the pads at the same time, fucking Superman opening up his shirt, or Hulk Hogan tearing up his Hulkamania shirt. And it's very funny.
Yeah, he does reference the Hulkster earlier when they're doing the wrestling bit. So I don't know if this is supposed to be calling back to that, but he does that, and then he goes out in the football field and dances with the players. He becomes the Roadrunner, where he basically throws a football to himself as he speeds past everybody. And then the whole marching band does a bunch of plays where they just beat up the other team. They stomp on their foot and pull their helmet, and that's how they get the ball through. And then they dance with them ballroom style to confuse them as Ernest throws to an open player. And then this happens. And this again goes against the entirety of the movie, where the Gerda takes the machine and is just putting the marching band football players in line and charging them up one by one to go out and go play.
Yeah. Remember how earlier they had to test the machine on Ernest because they couldn't afford to test it on a monkey? And they haven't used it on anyone else except Ernest? And the last time they used it on Ernest, it made him a jerk?
And gave him a stroke?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Now they're using it on kids.
So that happens. And they get better at playing, they're doing the thing. And then I will, again, express my hatred for this later on. But they're at the last play of the field, and Maisie does her whispering thing again, where she's like, I got a plan, we're going to do this. And then they do this is the plan, we're going to do this plan. And I can't. This is too much for me. Nate, can you take this bullet from me right now and just tell the listeners what happens? Because this is just, I'm already boiling with anger.
So she seduces one of the other players, but all she does is look at him and motion with her finger and whisper, and she tells him he's cute, and he's all and then that's the plan. That's what they do. The one girl character, the one moment that she gets is she uses the fact that she's a girl to get a big threatening football player on the other team to get so horny for her that he becomes bad at football.
And he just hands her the ball while Ernest, in full Cupid costume, shoots a golden arrow at the back of his football helmet. And one of the other players plays violin in the background.
Yeah.
And this is what I think like set me off the most was when the announcer was like, the old Cupid play, as it's like a thing.
What other circumstance would that have ever come up?
Yes, the moment where a girl uses her superwoman powers to make another opponent horny enough, while a third player comes out dressed up as Cupid and shoots an arrow in their helmet, as a fourth player does some violin music nearby, and then they just give the ball to her. The Cupid play.
I mean, I don't know. I do think that's kind of funny when something like wacky and totally inexplicable happens and other characters react like it's a thing that's happened a million times. But perhaps we're not giving them enough credit. What if this is what if they're just really progressive? Like, most of these games, they're going to be all male teams versus each other. So, you know, maybe they're just a lot more open than other high school districts at the time. It is weird. Like, the implication that this keeps happening in high school football is a little unsettling. Yeah, this is the whole sequence is very weird and not good. It's not good. It's bad.
Also, that a high school student in a movie where the main character is a 40-year-old man uses her wily woman powers to win a football game.
Yeah. We need to move on though, because we've got to finish talking about this movie, please. We've almost been at this for 3 hours. We got to keep going.
I know. All right. So Ernest runs out for the final play, but Gerda and Bobby realize they didn't charge Ernest, and Bobby yells out 9, and Ernest starts to stroke out as he's giving the call, but then just dodges people as Ernest, and a football player slips on ketchup because the pig comes out and bites into a bottle that had ketchup.
I think it just steps on it.
I mean, it sounds like it's like, you know, a thing that I'm just throwing in there, but that actually happens. And then Ernest knocks into some marching band people and jumps on top of a bass drum, and then bass drum runs to a touchdown while some clown music plays, and Mr. Axwell stares on glassy-eyed. And then the fourth African-American character in this movie comes out with no lines, and just growls at him and tries to run at him, and then tackles Ernest. The ball goes flying. Ernest crawls with more clown music to catch the ball and catches it, and then the Muskrats win. And then Coach Deckard gets upset with a bunch of football players in their underwear, and they dump Gatorade on him.
That is what happens.
Then Ernest gets tackled by the entire football team from the other group, but then they also lift him up. And Rodney goes to the principal and this one other character who's never introduced, but is by context somebody on the school board, to tell them that Mr. Axwell was trying to do some collusion with the coach to get the team to fail. And then she says he's fired, and she assures that the school will stay open. And then the muskrat mascot comes up and knocks out Mr. Axwell, and that's the last we see of him.
Yep. That is what I feel like. That's everything is like, my reaction is I mean, that did happen. I saw it in the movie somehow.
And it ends with Miss Flugel coming up to say that she's happy and proud of Ernest. As everybody cheers, it fades away the next day, where the students are in the Ernest special janitor room, where they help him study, and saying that he passed the test, just, you know, and he's going to graduate, and he has this like box with him. And then they leave as Miss Flugel shows up, and Ernest shows her this music box that he made. And when he opens it, it screams the same loud noise from earlier, just like the Supremo vac.
It's like, we got to the end, and it's like, they're like, hey, remember this thing? And we're like, no, we don't remember this thing. A million fucking things have happened since then. Why do you think we care about this?
So Ernest smashes the music box that he lovingly made for Miss Flugel, and what does he find? The motor from earlier that made that same noise that escaped.
But he put it in there. He had to have put it in there. What?
Now, listeners, we've been enjoying having you here, and we know it's been a long ride, but we have to just get your attention for this one moment right now. When Ernest finds this motor, what do you think he does? What is his go-to that he does with this motor once he finds it? Do you want to pause for a second to see if you have a correct answer? If you guessed, puts it in his mouth again. You are correct.
That's a rule of threes, baby.
It's worse than that. because he puts it in his mouth, he bites down on it, it finally stops, he spits up the mashed up motor, and then he just puts it right back in his mouth. And that's how the movie ends. The movie literally, that is the last scene of this wild fucking movie, is that him just looking at the camera, shrugging, and putting the chunk of mechanics back in his mouth.
He just cuts the credits, and we were both like, what? That's it? Like, I haven't been this baffled by a movie's final moments since I saw My Five Wives starring Rodney Dangerfield, which is a movie that literally ends with him saying a joke about how he has a small dick and then just smash cut the credits. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why doesn't it end with him, like, kissing or something? Why does it end on that? What is this fucking movie? Why is this movie like this? It felt... Okay, here's my... can I give you my big timeline theory on this one that I think makes it make sense?
Yeah, let's do a smash cut to a timeline corner right now.
Okay. I touched on this a little bit, I think, in the previous episode, but here is my genuine take on this. After goes to jail, where Ernest, in a very big, sort of media attention-grabbing type way, flies into space and thwarts a bank robbery and defeats his evil doppelganger and escapes from jail, becomes a cultural figure, and then they make movies about him, and Rides Again and Goes to School are both fictional Ernest movies that exist in the Ernest universe, about an exaggerated, sort of unreal version of Ernest's character. But, I know what you're thinking. That's sort of dissatisfying, right? Because then it's like, well, this isn't about a real Ernest, and we're like too many layers deep in the unreality, and it's like, but if you take into account sort of like Marvel Universe, multiverse type rules, and that means that somewhere out there, there is a world in the multiverse that is identical to this fictional world. So we can still take solace in the fact that this Ernest is a real and true Ernest, just not the Ernest we know and love. Does that make sense?
Yes, I don't like it.
After Ernest Rides Again, there's never going to be a satisfying one. The timeline is exploded. So this is what I'm proposing is there's 3 timelines now. There's Victory Timeline, which has goes to jail. There's a Defeat Timeline, which has Scared Stupid and Saves Christmas. And then there's the sub-Ernest, Ernest 2 timeline, which has this and Rides Again. This would obviously be first. He graduates from high school and then becomes a college janitor. And those are fictionalized in the other Ernest universes. Like that is the only way that I can square this in my mind. It's not the only way, but that's the way I choose to square it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm with you, but I need to be a little bit of a devil's advocate right now. So there's 3 timelines, but 2 Ernest movies in each after the 6 Ernest movies we've watched. And you're saying that the 3rd timeline is Ernest in movies as a fictionalized Ernest. But in that universe, is he played by Ernest?
Who knows?
Okay, but what I'm trying to get to is, like, what makes the fictionalized Ernest, like, worthy of being in a movie? Is it that he was in Scared Stupid and he saved the town from trolls and now he's a folk hero? Is it that he saved Christmas?
It goes to jail. It's Goes to Jail. It's the events of Goes to Jail.
Why would that... Like, that movie doesn't end with him being famous.
No, but of course, it's a big deal. All the cops show up at the fucking bank. Like, the story of
You mean the prison guards?
Yeah, but there's whatever. There's a big conflict. It could be any of them. It could. That's the thing. This could be the movies could exist in any of the Ernest timeline because it could be Scared Stupid. Like, but then at the end, I think at the end he's kind of. Anyway, I was saying Ernest goes on a big adventure and becomes famous, and they make movies about him, which then creates a universe where there's a more exaggerated version of Ernest. An Ernest that's immortal, but in a cartoon way, not in a mystical warrior type way, like he is in the other movies. This podcast is so weird. But you get what I'm saying, right?
I think so.
Like, this creates an Ernest universe that works differently than the other universes. But, you know, that's how it works in Marvel, right? It's always like Age of X is like a fake created world. But then also there's a universe that's just exactly like that exists on its own. So it's like, I think the reason these are exaggerated is because they're starting from a point of being fictionalized. But then I'm also saying this is its own living, breathing universe in the Ernest multiverse. I have to stop talking about this. I can't keep saying these things. Let's move on, please. Save me.
Okay, I think it's time to move on. I hope by the next Ernest movie we can maybe cement the timeline a little bit better. So I gotta be honest with you, buddy. Right now, it's still falling apart.
It's not. It's fine. It's perfectly stable. It's just not the most satisfying. We have to just... We can't stop. We gotta stop. Let's move on. This is the next part of the podcast. Please. We don't say anything else about the timeline or I'm gonna come apart.
Okay, first I just want to make a note. You know, we've talked a lot about how like these side characters in movies don't really have endings.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is no stranger to that. The football jocks don't really get a payoff. The Rodney character is barely a character. He's like mostly a transition piece when he's doing his DJ stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The crush between Donald and Maisie never gets paid off. By the end of the movie, Miss Flugel is dating Ernest? We don't know.
Maybe.
Principal Proctor, Mr. Axwell, they don't get any endings either. Mr. Axwell's just knocked out by the mascot, and that's it. No one cares. Gerda and Bobby, I don't know. I don't know what their ending is. They don't really have.
No, I don't.
It's just nothing is paid off except for the small things that are paid off.
Here's the thing. The weirdest part to me is in the beginning they set up Ernest tries to give the football team advice and they reject him. Then later Ernest leads a football team made up of the marching bands.
Not the football team.
He leads a football team to victory, and also the football coach is exposed as being corrupt and is at least implied to be fired. But then they don't have Ernest become the football coach. Like, they set up all of this stuff that seems like it's pointing to Ernest's victories that he becomes the football coach. And then they just decide they don't care. And they don't show it. And it doesn't happen. And everything about this movie is baffling and frustrating to me. I feel like maybe I gave it too high a score. Because now we're getting to the end of this long conversation. And if I had a physical copy of it, I would throw it across the room.
I really think that you were too generous with your original rating of this movie.
I think you're right. I didn't have a bad time watching it, but like, the more I think about it, the more it is like it's like a madness. It is. I feel like I'm the psychiatrist that had to talk to the Joker. You know how that always happens. Like that. This movie is the Joker,
and you're Harley Quinn now.
No. I'm not. I don't get to be cool. I'm just like I'm like the guy in Killer Smile or something.
Okay. What do you think, now that we've gone through this entire movie, what do you think about my epiphany with regards to Saves Christmas? Do you think that holds water?
You're totally right.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't want to think I was going crazy from this movie, because this movie will make you go crazy.
Is it Cherry? Is it John Cherry? He's back in the next one, right? That's going to be the real test. I think, like, he was the super ego of this trio. I think that Varney is the id, and I guess Cook Sam's is the ego. But like, what John Archerry must have been the one that was keeping everyone in line, because he's gone and now it is anarchy.
Yes, so the next movie, Ernest Slam Dunk, is written and directed by John Archerry, and Coke Sam's does not seem to be a part of it, according to IMDb.
Yeah, he went back to the fifth dimension to fucking menace Superman.
Yeah, so, we'll have to see how that goes. But I think it definitely proved that John Archerry was, like, the restraint. He was holding it all together.
Yeah. Alright, so, what are we doing now? What's the next part of this podcast? We gotta finish this fucking podcast, Josh, please. I fear we'll be talking about this movie forever if we don't finish it soon.
I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you. Alright, we gotta get into essential elements and then high and low points. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's do essential elements. And let's try and speed round it to a certain extent.
Okay.
Some of them we can focus on, but Hat and Vest, it's there. Low status with ambition / class struggle. He doesn't have a very clear ambition, and that's a problem with this movie. But he is low status, and there is an element of class struggle. Quote, craftsman, definitely there. It's a big part of this movie. He builds this stupid vacuum machine. Folksy, quote, wisdom end quote. Kinda a little bit. There's the part where he gives the advice to the team, but part of it is this movie that this can't be a huge element of the movie because he spends so much of it smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say no to that one then.
No, not yeah. It's like very like it's a. You could argue a little bit, but it's like not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Catchphrases, EU. You know what I mean? Snicker. It's all there. He does them all.
The EU actually isn't.
Oh, it isn't? Okay. I thought it was.
No, he doesn't do that once, which is weird, especially with like the toilet scene in the beginning of the movie.
Oh, it should have been there. Would have been fun. But he does the other ones.
Yeah, he does. In fact, we commented that the Snicker was absent from Rides Again. It's very forward in this movie. Like, it's very, like, in your face. He does it a lot in this movie.
Yeah. Slapstick comedy, for sure. All over the joint. Gamera-esque, friend to all children / child at heart. I think, for sure. I mean, they're older, but yeah. And the child at heart thing, definitely. Mm-hmm. Complicated relationship with machines and animals, for sure. I mean, the animals less so, but machines, I mean, the plot is that he's got to use a crazy brain zapper machine, and then it fucks him up and stuff, so for sure. And the engine.
Right. I think this movie would have been better if he interacted with the pig more.
Yes, that's what we kept saying, yeah.
I think I wouldn't, say they got the animals part right, and that's a bad thing for this movie.
Mm-hmm. Incompetent and inept, absolutely, and that's the whole
100%.
plot of the movie. Cartoon violence, more so than in any other one.
Mm-hmm.
Overly and quickly confident, again, that's there, sort of. But it's they kind of strip that out of his character and then make it a flaw introduced by the machine, which I think is a big part of why this movie doesn't really work as well as the other one.
For sure. And I think that's a big part of why this is not a great movie, is because they stripped the confidence out of Ernest, and that's the whole plot is that he's not confident.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work with Ernest as a character.
For sure. Can't eat. I guess he doesn't eat in this. He puts stuff in his mouth, but yeah, we don't see him eat. He talks about eating.
But he does not eat.
Easily bamboozled / distracted.
Not really.
I guess he gets distracted, but he doesn't really get bamboozled.
Alright, now we get to the next section, which I kind of am interested to talk about. Supernatural element.
It's supernatural, but it is not magical. This is the science fiction Ernest movie.
Yeah, but there's also the cowboy and some other unexplained stuff. Is that supernatural?
I don't know. That's is this magical realist? That stuff's not treated with the weight of the supernatural the way that Trantor is. It's inexplicable. So I guess you could count that, but I definitely think the brain zapping machine counts as a supernatural element in and of itself.
Okay, but do you think this movie would have worked better if there was a better supernatural element in it?
I think what I said earlier, I feel like this would have been better if there was more of the sci-fi stuff. I don't think they needed to introduce a wizard's curse or some shit. I don't think that would have just made the movie more confusing. But I could have stood them to ramp up some of the sci-fi stuff and dealt more with if the plot was more centered around the brain machine, then it would have probably had more of a focus and been better.
Okay, so then we should definitely keep that as part of the essentials.
Yeah, I think that's definitely.
Maybe we should just adjust it to say supernatural / sci-fi element.
Oh, I could say. What about fantastical?
Fantastical's good.
Then that would just cover everything.
Yeah, that's better because that way it has a wider range.
Okay, chaos for sure. Probably more than any other movie so far.
Mm-hmm.
Ernest must suffer physically and emotionally, but ultimately triumph. I mean, I guess he does, but it's less affecting than it is in any of the other ones.
Yeah.
He probably could have stood to seem to suffer more, I suppose, to gain more sympathy.
Jumping ahead, he does hit rock bottom with the tuba, but it's just not done well, as we talked about, so...
Yes, he does hit rock bottom with the tuba.
Welcome to our weird podcast. I'm sorry.
Self-sacrifice?
Nope.
I again, this isn't really here, but I do think that it would have been better. I feel like this movie needed more emotional weight to it. I mean, I'm not saying I want I want a drama. I don't need Philadelphia, but with Ernest. But I think about the awful glad it's raining part of goes to camp and stuff like that, where you really feel for him as cartoony as he is, and there really isn't anything like that here.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I think like him like realizing that he's one of the sole reasons the school might get shut down, and like there could have been like a point where he like willingly tries to leave, and then the students convince him to not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Master of Disguise or Impressions?
He does like one impression of this movie, and he does like Ernest, but that's really not there. And this is like we mentioned earlier, we don't see Aunt Nelda in this movie. We don't see any of Ernestisms with the disguises. And is that a bad thing?
I don't... You know what? Honestly, I feel like the lack of that in this movie made me realize that I'm kind of ambivalent towards it. Like, I don't really care if he wears the disguises or not. Rarely has that ever been one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like, honestly, I could see us taking that off the list after this. Like, I don't think this movie wasn't, like, so good without it that it proved they were inessential, but that was not at any point a thing that I thought this movie needed to be better.
Okay. I think I'm just going to, like, mark it in, like, red and say we're going to consider this for the next film, but we might end up taking this off completely.
Mm-hmm. But then again, also my pitch for the Legion of Ernest does hinge on that, so maybe it is essential.
Let's just keep it in conversation.
Rimshot? I can't believe I'm going to say. Okay, so, like, this movie doesn't have Rimshot in it, and it would have been better with Rimshot. That's, like, absolutely true. But also, it's, like, at no point when I was watching it was I, like, Rides Again, I was watching it, and I was like, fuck, man, this could have used Rimshot. Rimshot would have improved this by a lot. I feel like Rimshot would have made it better, but at no point was I, like, desperately missing him. I think 2 movies removed, I kind of feel like it has revealed to me that as great as he is, as beloved as he is by all mankind, I don't think he's essential. I could see taking him off the list. I'll still probably try and include him in the pitch at the end, but I don't think we need Rimshot. And I feel sick to my stomach when I say that.
Okay.
But I think it's true.
So we're 2 movies removed from Rimshot, and we have 1 for and 1 against. Let's keep him on the list and see what the next movie says. And if the next movie we're like, nah, I didn't really need Rimshot, then maybe we'll take him off. But this movie in particular, I think we kind of covered it earlier, where we're talking about him, Ernest having the pig, Mowgli, as his sidekick or his nemesis, and either would have worked kind of well. I think like we could have replaced the Rimshot role in this movie with the pig, and it would have been fine. So I'm in agreement with you on that, but I do still see like a room in this movie for like an animal sidekick / bigger animal role.
Okay, Ernest has to hit rock bottom. He does in this movie. Could have been better. I do think that's still essential. And the hater, I mean, without a hater, this movie would have been...
What is this movie?
Completely, up the creek. It would have been nothing. It would have disappeared into thin air. So, like, yeah, I think that's essential. Like, it's pretty clear that, like, if nothing else, the presence of the hater can hold the movie together at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's a shitty hater, and the shittiest hater we've had yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great argument for hater. We keep that in. So that is the end of the essentials. I did want to bring up something that we've seen as a consistent throughout the movies and talk about it. Because I don't know if we'll ever get a movie without them. I think we will in Goes to Africa. But let's talk about the 2 character trope, just really quickly. We have Gerda and Bobby in this movie. We have expressed our love for Gaylord Sartain, for Bill Berge. What do you think about the 2 character trope? Is that an essential?
I think it is.
Like, would this movie have been better without them?
No. Well, this movie would have been nothing without them. Again, like the hater. This movie would have had no plot at all if it wasn't for them. Mm-hmm. I do think it's essential. I think that, like, it's a nice unifying element that makes the movies feel, like, not necessarily connected, but feel like of a piece. And I think that, like, there has to be some other characters that can carry some of the weight so that it's not just entirely on Varney's shoulders the entire time. And I think, like, when they're done well, they're really good. I do think when, like, that they're mishandled, it kind of fucks up the movie a little bit, like it does in Rides Again. Here, I think they're kind of in the middle of the spectrum of quality of the 2 characters. But I do think it's something you need. I think because it is one of the most consistent tropes, it really would... I don't think it would feel like an Ernest movie if it didn't have them. And if you're right, and they don't have that in Goes to Africa, then we'll get to see a real test of whether or not that's essential. But I say for now, I would be totally down to add them to the list. I don't know how we word it.
I'm just going to write down 2 characters trope.
Okay.
And I think that'll make sense to us as Ernest scholars, and then anyone who reads these notes will be like, what?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. That sounds good to me.
So, cool. We'll add that. Is there anything else you want to add or take off the essentials list or make an argument for?
Do we want to, what about do we want to add, how would I word this? Do you want to add opening credits sequence?
Now that's a question.
Because that wasn't in this movie, and we did complain about it.
Yeah, I do want to add it.
Right.
I think that's essential, because I think like that sets the tone. Like when we watched Scared Stupid, and we were like, yeah, Ernest reacting to old horror movies. And even though Rides Again sucked, we were like, oh, cool, Ernest is doing history stuff.
Yeah, and the funny
song.
Yeah,
I think that's essential.
Yeah, all right, then I say add it to the list. I think that is... You gotta have that sort of goofy opening credit sequence to really set the tone for an Ernest movie. And again, as we saw in Rides Again, it can, add to the film when it's weaker.
Mm-hmm. All right, so opening credit sequence to set goofy tone. That is added.
There's... Oh, man, I can't believe I'm dragging this podcast out more. But so
it's okay.
Had this thing...
People love it.
We had this thing earlier on in the era of the podcast, where on the list for a while we had Ernest breaking the fourth wall and addressing the camera and self-awareness. And we removed it because it wasn't really in the other films. It comes back in this. Did it prove its worth, or did it just reveal how correct we had been for saying it was inessential?
I think it's the latter, because I think we were confused at first because we weren't sure if he was talking to somebody or to the audience. Because it transitions from him talking to people to just talking to a camera, also just rambling to himself. And we've seen in other movies him ramble to himself, and it sucked. But I think the ambivalence of is he doing this? Is he doing that? I think it just didn't matter. I think at the end of the day we were like, it's whatever. And I think this movie kind of proved that we didn't need that in the first place. I think we were right by establishing that. How do you feel?
I agree. I just feel like we had to bring it up because, it was the return of it.
You're right. We definitely should have established that. So I think we're doing the thing where we pay back to our bits. Pay attention, Coke Sam's. Yeah, we have agreed that is not something that would be good in an Ernest movie moving forward, and we were right for doing that.
Okay, is that it? Are we done with?
We've done the essentials. Unless there's anything else you got.
No, I'm good.
All right, then we're moving on to high and low points. So I think I'll start us off, since you seem to be getting towards your wit's end. So let's start off with low points. Just get those out there, and we'll end on a high note. I have repeatedly mentioned earlier that the old Cupid play frickin' sucked, and I hated it, and I was cringing, and I was getting upset, and the whole only woman character using her womanly wiles as a good thing is awful.
Yeah. Okay.
That is my ultimate low point. I do have another small low point, but that's my ultimate low point.
I agree with you, I think. I agree with you. I think that is the low point of the movie. I think it's the worst sequence. I do have other things I want to shout out. The overall trope of Ernest being unconfident driving the movie, I think, is bad. I think there's a bunch of stuff that's kind of a missed opportunity. I mean, all of the non-payoffs, like I said, all of the missed opportunities of not seeing him graduate, the tuba sequence not being as good as he could have been, all that stuff are low points for me. But I think the one sequence that's in the movie that works the least and was the most kind of, it wasn't as, we'll get to comparing it to another thing, it wasn't as uncomfortable as some other stuff, but it was the one part of the movie where we kind of instead of being confused or amused or just cackling like madmen at the insanity of this movie, we did kind of groan, because it's it really is one of the only things that of consequence that character does, and it's such she did not have a fully fleshed out character, but up until that point her character seemed to be that she was smart, and then it's why is this it? Why couldn't she just come up with a play or something? Yeah, I agree.
All right. I agree with all of your other shout-outs. My other shout-out was the demon Nazi teacher, just because of the absurdity of it and how it just ends with her eating the fly and it never gets paid off. I dislike that more than the cowboy stuff and all the other stuff didn't get paid off, because it felt degrading.
Yeah.
to like a movie with like teachers, like maybe I'm viewing this in a modern tone where like teachers are these essential heroes that deal with so much crap. But like this one teacher character that we've never seen before, turning her into a Nazi and then turning her into a demon and then never resolving that, just felt bad.
It's another weird, inexplicable Nazi reference, like the "I am Joseph Mengele" line from Goes to Camp. It's like, why is that there? Yeah. I that's another thing where I feel like those read harsher to us because we're in, well, now 2021, but, you know, like, we've lived through, like, this current political moment in America. And so it's like, it ain't so funny to reference Nazis if you're just bringing them up, like, and not making a point about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
so we're in agreement on the low point. You want to get the high point?
Sure.
Okay.
What do you got?
My high point was the motor, the motor making the noises. I mean, it didn't. It ended the movie in a bad ending way, but I thought it was a funny bit, and I think like the montage of him destroying that vacuum in the most violent way possible was hilarious, and I really liked it.
I think my what is my hype?
You got this.
Made me laugh the most in this movie.
I believe in you.
Honestly, this is such a weird, specific thing, but like, I just really like seeing a pig wearing headphones. I'm sorry, I gotta follow my instincts and go with just the inexplicable image of a pig in headphones. It delighted me. I know I'm like a parody of myself, but that is that's my high point. The height of my enjoyment of the movie was when that pig showed up with those headphones on.
All right, well, you and we will fight to the death over this till the end of times or until somebody else watches this crazy, wacky movie. So I think we need to introduce our special guest to help us settle this debate. Nate, turning to you.
I would like to introduce the honorable, most scientific...
Drum roll, please.
Wheel deGrasse Tyson.
Ho!
So you've heard you've heard us make our cases. What do you think, Wheel? I don't think I disagree with him, but he has agreed with me. And the high point of this movie is the pig in the headphones, which, you know what? Now that another person holds this belief, I see now that it was wrong and I was wrong. But, alas, and ultimately I don't think it's going to matter because we're going to have to match these up against our franchise total high and low points. And I don't think either of these are going to beat those.
Well, let's find out. But thank you, Wheel. Even though after you told us your answer, you commented on how nothing matters in the scope of the universe, which we understand, especially after seeing this movie. It actually helps our sanity with this movie.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine him watching this movie? His brain would explode.
I mean, that's why we only brought him on for the podcast.
You know, it's like how those memes about, like, giving, like, warheads or, like, flaming hot Cheetos to, like, Victorian orphans. That's what it would be like if you showed a scientist this movie.
So we spared you, Wheel. You're welcome. So the best bit for this movie is the pig in headphones. Good job, Nate.
I'm ashamed of myself.
Okay, so let's start with the low point. Our general series low point is the gratuitous threat of assault from Ernest Goes to Jail. Is that better or worse than the only woman character using her feminine wiles to do something in the old Cupid play?
I don't know. I'm of two minds. That made me much more uncomfortable. The one from Goes to Jail. But one, that's in a better movie overall. But two, that character, you know, the woman that is involved in that scene gets more to do in that movie than Maisie does in this movie. Like, I feel like this sequence isn't as bad in isolation, but it is also her only real starring moment in the movie, and I don't know the answer, but I wonder if that makes it worse.
I think it might, but I have a counterpoint in that before the bank teller, I forget her name, but she was a bank teller. Before she gets to that close gratuitous threat of assault with Nash, she gets her tire flat and she yells to the sky that she won't be a victim anymore.
I believe that is after that, but you're right, that does happen.
So it's just in general not a great portrayal of female characters, and I hate that, you know, two men are saying that on a podcast, but
yeah. I think I'm gonna leave that. I mean, I feel like that's like, I also like, I don't know. I feel like over time cinema and art has gotten better about stuff like this Cupid scene and about giving, you know, girls more to do in stories. Whereas there are still lots and lots of big deal movies that basically have that scene and deal in that same sort of cheap usage of you know, assault the way that scene does.
right.
So I think that's the worst. That's worse. I don't fucking know, dude. This is impossible. We've put ourselves in a discourse prison from which we cannot escape.
I think we're just going to leave it there and just transition to our high point of the series, which is, again, from Ernest Goes to Jail. Citing that Ernest Goes to Jail is a polarizing movie. Ernest doing the vaudeville scene where he bites the pen in court versus Ernest just going ham on oh no, I lost. Versus a pig in headphones.
Yeah, you were making you thought we made the right decision. You were mistaken. No. We are in hell. Yeah, no, the pen is better. It's better because it's a real scene and it's not just a pig in headphones. What is wrong with you, Nate?
This movie
it's clearly
has
better.
driven us insane, more so than Rides Again, which we did not think was possible.
No, I shudder to think what's going to happen to us over the rest of this season.
Oh, God.
It's definitely the pen scene, right, Josh? Please don't turn the heel on me and try to argue that it's the pig, or I will end this podcast forever.
No, I think even Neil deGrasse Tyson would agree with us, despite his infinite knowledge about how everything is the same, that this is better.
Okay. So that's it, right? We're at the end. We're free now.
Well, we unfortunately have to keep going on this journey, so let's pick ourselves up. Let's get back to it. Let's push forward through this mess and hope that the next movie will be better and blow us away. And what is that next movie, Nate?
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. Come on and slam, Dunk Ernest is the movie.
I mean, you know, I'm starting to get high hopes now. I think that movie will be like, I think there's a bright light ahead of us, Nate, and it's covered in basketballs.
I'm excited. This was a real gem. I had a blast the first time we watched this together. I'm actually very excited to watch this movie again. I think it's going to be a wonderful respite from the nightmare that Goes to School turned out to be.
Well, we thank you, listeners, for bearing with us throughout this 3-hour or so episode. We appreciate you. We're glad we have you here. So,
yes, join us next time when a beautiful basketball angel will pull us out of the underworld and bring us back into the light.
From myself, Nate, and our special guest, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Until next time, remember, there's a right and wrong in the universe, and the distinction is not hard to make. You know what I mean?
All of you, Vern. But now you gotta move, Vern!